So I guess as we start out again, I'd like to remind the committee that in our county, no residents get to vote on this budget. We are the only representatives for the entire county. So we've got I think a pretty heavy burden on our shoulders to make sure that, we do the best for both the county and for all the residents of the county. So I just wanted to make sure that I keep pounding on that for everybody. So right now we've gotten two budgets from the commissioners, version 4 and version 5. Version 4 is at 13.64% increase, and version 5 is at 17.1% increase. And when I looked through them, I could tell the differences, I think, but I guess I'd like the commissioners to kind of talk about that. If you could talk about the two budgets.
Mr.
Why
Chair,
did you get
are we gonna follow the agenda?
called to order? Oh, minutes review. Sorry. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to accept the minutes of 12/12 and 1/27. Do I have a motion?
Second.
All in favor? Okay, so the minutes are accepted. So now we've got now we're into the two revised county budgets. Thank you, Mary. So if you guys could kind of talk about why did you give us two budgets to look at? Why didn't you,
You want me to go or you wanna go? Where do you wanna go?
Start from the right.
All right, thanks, Mr. Chair. So. Oh, no, I don't need that. So basically, last week, there's again, some differences of opinion. So felt it was best for us to give you options and give you reasons for options. So we took the original budget that we presented to you about a month ago, I think it was. And we looked it over and, went over the wants and the needs that we could produce, with it, and that was one. And then there was a second one, that was version 4 and then 5. Then the second one was around a 13, I believe, right? Or was the first, right? And there's some differences. I mean, I personally struggle with the 13. I know that there was a lot of work that was done on it, but I feel like that there's some cliffs in it. But so I'm kind of leaning more towards that 17 number. But some of those cliffs, there was some cutting of funding that the sheriff's department and some more with the health insurance and trimming out some more of that kind of stuff. And yeah, and then on the 17 end, it was trying to squeeze more out of some places, and it's just a difference of opinions, honestly.
so it's a difference of opinion of the commissioners?
Yes.
If the commissioners picked a budget to go with, which budget would you pick for? I mean, because I'm not used to getting two different budgets to look at. So give me a budget, and it's your budget, not my budget. Although I'm feeling funny.
I think that that's very fair, and I am gonna take the stance on this. And I did mention this to Kevin a month ago. I still feel that it's still Kevin and I's budget. Out of respect for Brian, because I feel like the shoe is over there, sitting down there with you guys. So I feel like that we really needed to sit down and present what our thoughts are. I mean, she could make a vote, but I personally don't feel comfortable, not because I'm trying to exclude her, but because I feel that there's a conflict of interest on her sitting on both sides. One was a development down there and then one was a process up here. So.
Well, I can say what I saw with the 13% budget.
I'm happy to speak more to the specifics of the difference between the two, if that's helpful.
It may be helpful for.
Yeah.
The committee.
You can hear
Go
me?
ahead.
Okay, great. So, and having sat on both sides of this, things that were heard very loud and clear were that we're concerned about the county's habit of having gone into reserves in past years. And so if that's a problem that we're trying to rectify, let's not present you a budget that's at the expense of going into reserves. And the 13% version does eat into some reserves more than the 17% version. Another thing that I've heard loud and clear, is that people were dissatisfied with how the county handled the opioid funds. We have a task force now that's ready to create a framework and, accept proposals and suggest how that money should be spent. So a difference between, what we've had before and what we have now is that, is the idea of not using $100,000 of opioid money to offset the jail medical assisted treatment, because we haven't begun working collaboratively with that task force to decide how those monies should be best spent. Even though I do think that's a good use of that money out of respect to the mistakes that have been made in the past, that was one thing. Another between these two budgets is that, and I commend the sheriff and his folks for finding a lot of savings in the jail budget. But one of them was using unexpended funds from last year to pay for the first quarter of jail housing, which would create a cliff for next year because we would have a much bigger jail housing expense.
Yeah.
So those are the big differences between the 13 and the 17% number. I think that the 17 point something is a more responsible budget based on the feedback that we've gotten. But we also heard loud and clear from the budget committee, which I was part of at that meeting, do better than 17.
Yeah.
So this is the result of doing better than 17 with some things that maybe you all don't actually believe in.
That's true. So I would guess anytime I see funds that we have on hand being used for recurring expenses. So I've got an expense that's gonna be there every year. If I use funds to get me out of a hole for this year, and that's probably the cliff that you're talking about, that is what causes me a problem in the subsequent year. And if I took, and I did take, I don't know, probably half a dozen things, not 90, I think it was 90,000 from IT budget, some money from the sheriff. And I said, okay, well, if we went with the 13% budget, whatever, version 4. And we took those things out. Next year, we're already behind 4.4% on the 2027 budget.
And so I say, for me as a taxpayer, I would rather think that I have a 17% increase this year and a less increase the following year than think, oh, great, it's gonna get down to 13 or 10 or whatever this year. But the following year, without even expanding any services, it's gonna be 20% because we built in these cliffs.
Yeah, and I'm not, it's hard enough with 1 year.
Right.
Going into the subsequent one.
And let's clarify.
But the other thing, a budget should be what you expect to spend. Not, my budget is this much, the revenues and how I'm gonna pay for it is another item. And the difference in the two becomes the assessments to the town.
Mhm.
So when you reduce your budget, like we have in that 13% budget, and I see things that aren't there, I just say, I don't have an accurate picture of what the budget is, because I've obfuscated using reserves and this for what I've got in the budget, so.
The 17 version is more realistic as to what is being spent.
Right, if you look at history's past, you've always tried to trim as much as possible. Then the commissioners before us would go to reserves. We ran into this issue last week. And, IT had a couple bills. We had a difference on how to pay for them. All we have to do with all we really can do with IT right now is pull from a reserve. They're not a department. So this county has had a nasty habit of pulling from their rainy day fund to pay for shortfalls.
Another large difference between the two was in the employee benefits line. the HR director felt that we were cutting it way too scary close to looking like we were gonna have to be, you know, if anything goes wrong, we're gonna be eating into, you know, other monies that are not budgeted, and we didn't wanna end up there.
That's right.
So we said, what's the sleep at night amount? And that's what we put in the 17 version.
Kevin, any comments?
Yeah,
A silly question.
so we've gone from, I think we're on version 6, but we'll stick with versions 4 and 5 for now. You know, there's a couple of things that we've done is one, I wanted to see another list of the reserve accounts, and I think you've got that in your package.
Yep.
The total of reserve accounts are
Nine.
$1,994,304 and change.
Yes.
You know, whatever the interest is per day or whatever. So we've got almost $2 million in reserves. That's it. I think if you just look historically at what's been going on with the county, I mean, we've had this discussion, I know amongst the staff a number of times. But I think the real issue started back in 2020, COVID. And I think it did for a lot of companies too. When there was a swing, a negative swing going to a $600,000 positive swing, that's $900,000 on a budget that was $9.2 million. If I was going in to turn around a healthcare company, that's a red flag for me, because when there's a negative to a positive swing like that on this size budget, there's something seriously wrong. And I think this, to go to Tim's point, is that, you know, we want to accurately reflect what the needs are of the county to run the county as a whole, not just a particular department, but we want to make sure that we're coming close to what we think that the county needs as a whole to run appropriately. Not to be extravagant, not to buy extra vehicles, not to fatten up any particular account, but we're trying to get to realistic numbers. And I think to go to one budget committee, Robin, I'll point out in her particular is that she wanted to see actual. So we did take actual 24, 25 average, and then we put in the 26 and gave you a 3-year average that way. So a 2 and a 3-year average just to see actuals, to help to solidify what the needs are for the county. Then the other marching order was to a RIFT, and we took a look at positions. So if you look at the RIFT positions, and I think it's included in the numbers are taken out of the version 4 budget, and that's the reason it's so low. It's 13.64%. There was $408,000 that we pulled out of the budget. One is the staff accountant, which is in version 5. 2 is the full-time position in IT, which is in version 5.
Kevin, I did not put those back into version 5.
Oh, you didn't?
No.
Okay, all right, so they're not in version
They are
5.
not.
All right, I stand corrected on that one there. But, you know, we looked at those RIFT positions and to see if there were any surplus positions or positions that were fattened up within the county. And, you know, how far can we push the apple on this one here? You know, we're still waiting on, well, you've got the memo from the auditor, the 23 audits coming. Hopefully, you know, in the second week maybe of March. He's given himself a deadline till the end of March. 24s are coming after that. But, you know, we still have some other issues that we're trying to deal with besides standing up a new accounting system by December 1st. And so if you look at the summary sheets of version 4 and version 5, that give you some accurate reflections of what's going on. I think, you know, it's you know, the county has sold the airport in the past. I think the net collections on that was $352,000 for 100 acres. They sold the county probate court to the city of Belfast for $700,000. We received the last payment in July of this year, 25, I'm sorry, 26. So there was assets sold to support weaknesses in the budget, you know, prior to this. There's nothing left to sell, you know, unless we want to sell the gardens out there, you know, those 60 acres and 5 brand new buildings out there. There's nothing left to sell. So now we're down, we need to have a realistic budget to work with. Obviously, healthcare is a big issue. You know, if you just go into any newspaper, if you click on the news at night, there's a healthcare crisis in the US. And the cost of healthcare has risen exponentially. People are still trying to figure it out. as to how to contain the cost, how to pay for it. And those are concerns that we have to think about going forward. If you just look at, I think there's some other numbers that Robin wanted, we've got those numbers here. But you know, the average cost per claimant, the benchmark is almost $6,200, we're running $12,300. The average claim cost benchmark is $428, we're running $915. So the number of claims that have gone in, you know, that we're paying for, when they arrive at the front door, we have to cut the check and pay for those claims. Stop loss for 2025, the cap was at 120, even though there was a $70,000 deductible, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, in 26, the stop loss starts at 130, and what's our deductible there on that one?
Still got 70,000.
It's still $70,000. So we have to pay these costs up front. Yes, we are getting money back, and I know Tracy has those numbers, but you know, irrespective of what we get back, they should be funding the health reserve account. Because we could get a claim in, or you know, one payment of claims, it would wipe out that account in 1 week, $330,000. So, you know, we're walking on some soft stones.
Yeah, I don't remember the auditors talking about how much that the balance in a health reserve ought to be.
I don't think they mentioned it either. Do you remember the audit report?
I don't remember reading.
I mean, that's a liability, that's a potential liability of the county.
They did not make the recommendation on that.
I didn't remember seeing one.
Mhm.
Wondering, I guess I'd like,
So
go ahead.
just to finish up, so there's cliffs in version 4. More cliffs in version 4 than there are in version 5, which is a 17%.
Right.
You know, we start meeting as a committee, as a commissioners with the department heads. I think we started August of last year.
I think it was in June.
It was a June.
June,
We started
July.
June?
The whole process started in June of last
June
year.
of last year. So we're coming up on that process again.
Yeah.
You know, it's like Groundhog Day. You know, we've got to get through this process. And we'll put this budget to bed because we're coming up against the wall. We have 3 grievances because of contractual issues with the unions, and we have to, which I suspect that you know, if we had to go to grievance in the full route, it'd be arbitration, which costs more legal fees. And then the other thing is we've got mounting bills that are, you know, one's $158,000, I think, for some software costs that do affect the safety of the county.
That's nearly an emergency.
That would be
Situation.
classified as an emergency situation when we get up against the wall in that. That wall is coming. So we need to figure out as a budget committee and as commissioners, what is livable. I know there's a cost increase to everybody. We're all taxpayers. But we've got to figure out what to do going forward. We need to come to a decision soon, very soon.
Okay.
Thank you.
Now I'd like to open it up to the committee. If you have any questions, the commissioners on the 2 versions. Mary, can I start with you? Do you?
So at our last meeting, to get towards the end of the meeting, to get the conversation going for the committee to have a chance to express some thoughts. I threw out a dollar number, which was getting us down to a 12% increase. So a little bit lower than version 4. I came upon that number because I had looked hard at budgets we had and the numbers we had and done a lot of budget work. And it seemed to be the most reasonable, sustainable short term that I could get to. That was why I threw that number out. I did not make notes on specific lines on the budget, but just a lot of experience, and that's where I felt was a reasonable end result. I didn't think we would ever get to be able to get to single digits this year. I completely understand the concerns of the commissioners. I completely understand budget is not just this year's budget. It's basically 3 years. because of contractual commitments that have been made with unions. And I think that prior commissioners were short-sighted in how they handled that and how they dealt with it financially. I believe that the towns and cities of the county cannot absorb a 17.14% increase.
I agree with you.
And since we had our last meeting, we're having a good old time winter. And, you know, we have towns who are, I'm sure, tearing their hair out. How are they gonna pay their plowing bills? How are they gonna pay for fuel? How are they gonna pay some basic necessities? That's even more dire than when we had our committee meetings in October, November, December. So sorry, I'm gonna have to say this, but I'm gonna say it because I got my big girl pants on today. The only place I see in the budget that there needs to be some hard discussion. And there's not a lot of room for movement because of contractual situations. But there needs to be an awfully hard look at the jail and the sheriff's departments. It's the only place I can see any chance of finding anything to help the situation.
And when you talk about the jail and the sheriffs, are you talking about employment or are you talking about expenses?
I'm talking about, we have a problem, a challenge, not a problem, a challenge, because of union contracts.
Sure.
There's not much you can do there. And they're there for another few years. And that has been a concern I've had since my first year on the budget and before, because I've been on the negotiating committees for the city of Belfast with those same unions for four rounds. So I know how that works. So there's not much you can do there. And it's a tough situation, but something has to happen there because there's nowhere else.
But I mean, I agree with you. When I look at the budget, there's not a lot that can be taken out of it unless you go to employment and the benefits that surround employment. And if our employment, payments are so rich that the towns can't afford it, then we've got to, I mean, if we don't do it now, we'll have the same discussion next year for sure.
This year.
Yeah.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
year. This year, when we go through the next year's budget.
Mhm.
So, I mean, when we talk about reduction, when I talk about reduction in force, I'm not talking about not filling positions that aren't filled. I'm talking about cutting positions that are there right now.
Yes. That's how dire this situation is.
I think so. I think so. And you see counties like our friends in Penobscot County just asked the governor for $8 million because they've depleted their reserves. No.
Yeah, we're at the point that this is no longer just a nice conversation.
Yeah,
This is now a dire situation.
yeah, I agree. I mean, it gets to the point where you say, okay, well, what can I do to save a deputy or a jail person? Okay, if I don't fund co-op, if I don't fund soil and water, I can save maybe $75,000 right there. I'm just saying.
I will say to your point on the two options, I think that the 12 was really hard to get to. Last week I did make a motion that it be handed to you guys in both of these options, what that breakdown would be for our towns of that 17% in their portion. You're not gonna find it in there because it was shot down, but it was asked.
What do you want?
It's your choice.
Okay. All right. Robin, if you wanna,
Okay. So when we asked to look at actuals versus budgets for the last few years running, and I made up a spreadsheet that actually looked at actuals versus budgets. Our budgets, especially weirdly, and maybe you guys have an explanation, in employee benefits, and I'm not just talking health plan, are hundreds of thousands of dollars higher than what the budgets are hundreds of thousands higher than what we actually ended up paying, like to Maine State Retirement and these different funds. And we keep looking at, oh, okay, we budgeted 160 this year, so now we're gonna need to budget 180 next year. And we're not looking at the fact that, oh, we only actually paid 128 of that 160. And so then the next year comes along and we're like, okay, well, we budgeted 180. And oh gee, we only paid 150 of the 180. We're accumulating a whole bunch of unexpended funds. And I'm gonna throw that word out there. Yes, I know they're unaudited. We've only gotten up through 2022 so far. But I do think that there's been every effort made by everyone doing all the bookkeeping in our county to make sure they're accurately recording things. I don't think there's hundreds of thousands of dollars of expenses that any auditor is going to find from these last couple of years to say, oh, you guys, you actually spent this. So, and I think that the relatively low interest that we're paying on the TAN for the last couple of years running helps to reinforce my theory that we are way over budgeting based on what we're actually spending, and we're not really paying close enough attention to that disparity, because we are paying way less interest than what we're budgeting.
Yeah, but she had a question, I was gonna ask what the question, there was a question there,
I did.
you did.
I'm
I-
wondering
She
if
said
maybe
maybe you have an explanation.
maybe the numbers that we're seeing in those appropriations reports that say this is the total that was paid to Maine State Retirement last year. I just keep using that as an example, but maybe what we're seeing in those appropriations report is wrong. You guys are in a better
So
position
you
to
want us to look
know.
at the appropriation report?
I don't know. I mean, we've been given appropriations reports. I took all my numbers from appropriations reports but early on, we'd ask the question of comparing budget to actual on a full year basis, and we're told that you guys don't customarily do that. We need to do that because the full year is what I don't understand why we
Yeah.
aren't doing that.
And I think part of that Maine State retirement might be something like, oh, we called the Maine State retirement people and they told us put this much in our budget. We put that much in our budget, and every time they do that, we're over by 20,000, 50,000, whatever in the budget versus expense.
Yeah.
So it could be something like that, but anyhow.
I mean, yeah, just,
So the question is to look at the actual as opposed from the appropriate. I'm just trying to make sure I get the question right. Work out.
yeah, I mean, if you wanna go and do some more diving in to look at some of these.
Actuals.
Yeah, because to me, that's the reality check on our budget, isn't what's the budget look like compared to last year's budget? It's what does last year's budget look like compared to last year's actual? And the year before's budget look like compared to the year before's actual? And let's budget something realistic compared to what we're actually spending and not what our other budget looked like.
What our previous budget.
Can Tracy respond?
Yeah,
I can't speak for previous years. I can just say that for 2026, myself and my admin assistant spent a combined 60 hours calculating every one of those down to the penny, based on what the budgeted salaries are for the 2026 budget. So I cannot speak for previous years, but I can say that what we have in the budget for 2026 is accurate to the penny for every employee at their current rate, the 2026 budget for Maine PERS and for FICA, for all of those. So you can see we have made very significant cuts in the benefits because of that. I think there was also a question about workers' comp. We were thinking we were paying way too little for workers' comp based on the request. So here is the most recent workers' comp bill for 2026. I had originally requested a total of $140,000 for workers' comp. You can see our bill is $139,000 and $139,700 change. So these are accurate totals in the 2026 budget for our 2026 totals.
Okay.
All right,
Is this a bunch of pages?
this is,
Like,
yeah,
all the
same
same.
thing.
Until.
Question. Tricky.
Yes.
What's the difference between the amount versus the amount?
Oh, no, that was just the first time. We're looking at that total amount for the year for 2026, yeah, which is 139,000.
So that's just for its period. then.
Correct, yeah. So we were off by $300 on our request for workers' comp for 2026.
So what are your big differences?
Well, there was Maine State retirement. Like in 2024, we budgeted 590,000 and we actually paid 407,000. That's $182,000 difference in Maine State retirement in 2024.
Mhm.
And I,
We have. this one.
yeah, this, I realized I never updated my annualized 12 months for when we actually got a 12-month, but we were on track in 2025 to be over budgeted by like 77,000 in Maine State retirement, but.
Robin, do you have this page that it shows the actuals?
Yes, but what it doesn't do, we asked for the actuals, so it shows the actuals, but then you don't have the budgeted number beside it.
Right,
So-
but we're trying to do it based on the actuals.
I know, but
Okay.
her point is that you're giving us a budget number that is much higher than the actual. So now you gave us the actuals, but we would have to go back into previous papers to find the budgeted. We do not still have the budgeted and the actuals side by side. So that's great, we have the actuals, but what was actually budgeted? What did the people have to pay? You know, that's what I was interested
What
in
did
seeing.
what did the residents have to pay?
What did we vote on for a budget? Cause we
Right.
see what we actually spend, but we don't get to see side by side what Barbara's saying is how much did we budget? It just seems, that seems to be the problem. I agree with her. We look at this year's budget. Well, last year it was this much, so of course everything goes up. So let's increase our budget, but unless we have those actual side by side, that just doesn't work. That's how we get into padding budgets and growing reserve accounts. Taxing more than we need to.
Well, let
And yeah,
Robin finish
in the
up.
most recent one, it is good to see that the Maine State retirement as a particular line is more in line. This latest budgeted number, considering the original budgeted number was 585,178. And so 489 is great compared to 585.
Any other, there's a
No.
bunch, I know.
Well, the jail, full-time payroll, I couldn't tie that out. And you gave us a breakout of every single person and their hourly rate and the number of weeks they were getting paid for. And even when I use that, I end up at 1,378,000 and your latest number is 1,404,000.
What was your number?
1,377,759.
Did that include stipends or anything?
No, it's just that full-time line, the
It's 30, whatever it is.
3,000. Well, yeah, it's all those positions down through transport up 3103 through 3125, not counting 3120. But trying to back into it, it just seemed like a significant change. I was expecting it to go down 4% because of the 1 pay period that you guys nudged into 2025, but when I actually sat down and ran the numbers out with 80-hour weeks and it came out significantly different. I mean, I think 28,000 is significantly different, but. That's all. I mean, there's,
Yep.
I mean, there's. Yeah. Some
I mean,
honestly, my take is but that whole IT budget is really what blew us up. I mean, we can talk about all these other things, but the idea that our IT went from 300,000 to 900, 800,000. That's something that is really gonna be hard for us to not
Compensate for, it. Right,
and to Bob's point about, wanting to make sure the budget shows the budget. Like if we paid that first quarterly inmate boarding out of unused funds from last year, which I totally get that we have unused funds because our budgets are higher than what our actuals are. But we can't just then, we need to have another offset line before we come down to what we're going to be assessing to the cities and towns.
yeah, so I guess what Robin's saying is that your budget should reflect the expenses that you had or you will have in 2026. And anything that you use to offset those expenses ought to be shown maybe in that revenue,
Well,
I
there's
wouldn't call
one
it
state-
revenue, I
well,
would
it's
just call it.
that state revenue line, which is specifically for the jail, right? Which was my final question was, isn't that encumbered in some ways for certain kinds of jail expenses? Like it's supposed to be used to cover or used toward certain expenses, like the county garden is looked at as the community engagement or something, and I don't know.
There is a breakdown for where money is, there's a vehicle for where money is supposed to go. I guess,
Do we make sure that money does get used to fund those lines? I mean, I hate to see us reducing, like, there was a significant reduction to the VOA contract.
Right.
But if some of that money is supposed to be going to that contract, I just want to make sure that,
that the other services are being performed that the money's for.
yeah.
Right, I agree with you.
But I mean, the VOA contract was reduced, but that's still. From a budget perspective, that should be the whole amount that you have in the budget.
Yeah, right.
And I mean, that's a.
And it is, I mean, that's where you put in the actual VOA, all of those jail expenses, and then there's that one line at the bottom before we get down to the county assessment. That's the state revenue funding, partially funding.
Jail fund.
Jail.
Whatever.
But I guess I'm asking, can't we have another line saying what the county is taking out of unencumbered available funds?
But I would
based
say,
on-
on that revenue schedule, we shouldn't call it revenue, we should just call it how we're gonna pay for this crap. We're paying for it by assessing taxes, we're paying for it because we're using reserves, we're paying for it because somebody gave us a grant, we're paying for it because the legislature finally grew a heart and decided to help the counties,
To Robin's point, the IT thing, it needed to become a department.
Not
So-
arguing that,
so-
no, yes, but.
So that part, I don't think is as gruesome as what happened to us with the jail. And I'm not gonna point fingers, but I mean, I've been calling a spade on the whole prosecutorial District 6 thing since January. And when they pulled talking to us and they started charging us crazy rates and Knox and Tuber just stopped talking to us. In my mind, this is how I run my life. That is a rainy day fund. That's a reserve account. Like we have to make a pivot. We don't have a choice. We have to pull our inmates and send them somewhere else. So like that, in my mind, that's a emergency. Because we don't have a jail to house them. So we can't put them in our reentry center. So we have to have a place to put them. I look at that as a cliff that is no longer there. That's how I look at that.
You mean because we've got Somerset removing
And
or having,
correct me if I'm wrong, Kevin, it was 5-year deal?
5 years.
That's what I thought. But also by doing that move, and I am gonna give Kevin credit, cause he did a great job on this one. It saved us, I wanna say $600,000. Was that what the number was?
Probably in somewhere in that range. Can I go back, not to interrupt, but I just want to go back because we're going back to formatting issues, what I call formatting issues, and I want to be clear on it. Is you want to see 24 actual to 24 budgeted.
25 to 20.
Yeah, and
24,
25 to
and then
25,
25,
yeah,
and then 26.
right.
You want to see average in there at all?
Not really.
Not
No,
really.
yes, no.
Just actual budgeted?
Yeah, I mean, just the way like the appropriations reports that come out, monthly appropriations, those are really handy where you've got the current year to date, the current budget, but then you have the
Gives you a
last 2
percentage.
years actuals.
Percentage.
I mean, you've got those 2 years of actual, you don't have the previous year budgets, but you've got the 2-year
So
actuals to
24
look at, so,
actual to budget,
yeah,
25 actual to budget,
yeah,
and then 26.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. All right, and let me go back to the IT budget. Besides that being a department now, you know, it's stood up as a department. What in there is the sticker shock? I mean, you're actually seeing the actual numbers for the software licensing costs, and I know.
But the sticker shock is that, I mean, the last 2 years of our budget committee that I was on,
There's nothing,
it was, yeah, it was.
salary line or
You
something.
know, there was a salary line and all the different departments had lines in them that looked like they were for computer stuff,
Sure.
but apparently they weren't. I mean, not the way we understood it as a budget committee, because all of a sudden, those figuratively got pulled out and put in this one place. All of a sudden, there's all this software expense and stuff that wasn't just in other lines of the budget. This isn't like pulling the utilities out of all the different
Sure.
departments and then putting it into.
This was paid with windfall money,
Right,
essentially.
you know,
That
I mean,
doesn't exist anymore.
so it
Right.
was like there was this kind of buildup happening and creating this,
Clip.
yeah. I'm just saying.
No, and he uses sticker shock. I'm not being argumentative. I'm just saying that like, they've been doing this IT and reserve thing for a long time. And it is a sticker shock, but it also became a cliff.
But, and it's necessary, and I'm not arguing that we can't fund it. I guess what I'm asking and going to the,
What's your ask?
yes,
What's the ask?
I really want to see, I know in our town, you know, in our town budget, we go through all the budget, all the different departments, and then at the end, there's the revenue section. And, you know, we have harbor fees, we have this and that, we have property tax, but we also have a line for where we took money from available funds, you know, that had accumulated over prior years. And we expect as taxpayers to use some of that to offset
Sure.
what our next tax burden is gonna be. I don't see that happening with the county budget. We do all of our departmental budgets. The only thing we do to reduce anything is that state jail offset.
Mhm.
And then the rest of it gets charged out to the towns, and I'm saying that there is money that has been accumulated that is general fund money. We don't know the exact number because the audits are so far behind, but I feel like, you know,
The
the
undesignated
town
fund balance.
deserve to have some amount of undesignated funds, you know, that goes to, you know, the tax relief.
Carrie, go ahead, because I know there was a report that we did on this.
So again, when your taxes are assessed to the towns, we are reducing it by revenue. In your budget binders, you have projected revenue. That is deducted from the whatever final number, 17 or 13,
Yeah.
whatever.
But
So you're already, we're reducing that line, but whatever that projected revenue is. We're not specifically saying that this revenue is going to this line, this revenue is going to this line. We're saying if our revenue is $1 million, we take that $1 million and we reduce that tax assessment. You are getting a further break. It is not going to a specific line.
yes,
There's no complaint there.
don't
No question
complain, and I didn't say anything about going to specific lines, but also what is not in the projected revenue is a line for money coming from unencumbered general fund money to help offset.
So the
Budget.
county only has to use the general fund if that value is 20% over the budgeted amount.
Okay, you only have to use it, but you are using it or something like it that isn't called it to do things like.
Like 2025 money.
What you've done in your last few, the minutes of the last few commissioners' reports, things where it's like, oh, well, we're taking $89,000 from unexpended 2025 funds to cover these two pieces of software.
And the commissioners have that authorization to do so.
Sure.
They can take, like, the unexpected, so you take your appropriation report, Robin, and you had said that there's $600,000. There is not $600,000 left over. And no, it does not reflect on your appropriation reports. But I'm gonna pick on the health fund, sorry, Tracy, for a second. And I'll say this again. We used TAN funds of $650,000 to cover funds for that specific account. That account doesn't generate revenue to cover those expenses, so those expenses come from where? The undesignated funds or the unfunded balance, the undesignated balance at the end of the year. IT reserve still had expenses. I am negative $114,000 in that reserve at this point. My severance account, which covers unemployment, it covers separation, it covers bereavement, what else? Everything that we get by a RIF. Oh, RIFs, grievances, anything there. I'm negative $55,000. There is no money. That bottom number, well, it is just a number. There is no money for unexpended funds for 2025. Did the jail have a balance? They absolutely did. And did they use it? Yes, to help reduce this budget the best that they could. Are you going to see expenses come to you again next year? You are, because our reserves will only last so long before you start seeing an increase again.
I'm not talking about these reserve funds. I'm talking about the difference between what was raised and appropriated in the budgets and what was actually expended in those prior years in those budgets. That is what rolls into the general fund, correct? Or does that go
Yes.
someplace different?
No, everything goes into the general
Right.
fund. Everything is there.
Right,
But the commissioners then decide if there is any balance left, if they are going to put it into reserve, which they have the full authorization to do. Or they can also authorize those expenditures based on statutes to use it for other areas that they see are needed. And that's the case that happened this year by paying those.
I am gonna give the other commissioners credit too, because there was one year, don't quote me on the year, but I feel like that it was 17 or 16, where they did give back the money that they had.
Yes,
Instead.
but I'm not talking about giving back to the towns. I'm just talking about planning on using your accumulated, I'm not saying just from 2025. 2025 could very well be depleted, but the accumulated undesignated fund balance to be able to take some of that to smooth out the blips, like the cliff with IT this year. You know, you take some my premise is that we have accumulated money, that we don't know the exact amount, but we have accumulated it.
How much do you think that we've accumulated?
Oh, well, over a couple of years, you said, I think we talked about $2 million.
It looked like, yeah, there was, let's see, to go back over here.
But there's statutes that govern what the commissioners can do. It's not the same as a municipality. The difference between county and municipality is you can have a full-on $4 million reserve, undesignated fund balance, and you can offset your entire budget with that. The commissioners don't have that. What we ask for a budget is what we get for a budget, and great if we have money left over at the end of the year. But it's up to the commissioners if they have that choice to offset by using the undesignated fund balance.
for example, when we sold the courthouse. We took that money and we paid a bill with it. We could have put it into a reserve. We paid the bills.
I
what the
understand,
co-
but the point, yeah, maybe you can
But
elucidate.
what the commissioners do have, the right to do that perhaps a municipality, we do not, is you guys can only keep 20%. If you have 20% or over 20% left over, you would have to return it to the municipalities. Or you can create another revenue account, another reserve account, which is how you came to have 42 different reserve accounts. So yes, you can say, we can't keep all that, you know, and I know they have the right to do whatever, but over 20%, then you can, correct? You can create,
If it's
Another
over
reserve.
20%, you have to give it back to the municipalities. If it's under that 20%, then they can create a revenue account. But if it's
A
over,
reserve
they
account.
have to give it back.
so as long as it's under the 20%. So the 20% then doesn't have to sit, you're saying, in the undesignated fund balance. But it's that 20% that they would take and somehow come up with all these 40 whatever accounts. Or I thought before you had said that they can keep the 20%, but anything over they have to give back unless they put it into another reserve account.
No, I'm sorry if that was misunderstood. If it's over 20%, that over 20% has to be offset to go back to the municipalities, which,
If
Is-
the balance in the account is over 20%, then it needs to go back to the county or the
town.
municipality.
if it's
But-
under 20%,
Yeah.
the commissioners have the authorization to fill their reserve accounts.
Yeah.
Put money into the contingency fund.
Yeah.
And they can also do a county tax relief fund, which we do not have,
Right,
that can be used to offset the tax assessment.
But don't the commissioners have the ability to take a look at what they have in an undesignated fund balance? Whoops, it's almost up to 20%. We better grab $10,000 and create a reserve and put it in a reserve account. So that when you look at the balance at the end of the year, that balance is less than 20%. I think that's what you were trying
Yeah.
to get to.
That's what I had thought that we had
I mean, I
discussed
think-
and learned earlier in the season.
So if I looked at 2025, what was the difference in 2025 between the actuals and the, and if we don't have it, look-
666,000.
So-
In 2024, it was 701,000.
so you had $600,000 in 2025 that you had in the budget, but you didn't spend. So you've got 600 somewhere, you got $600,000. Now, you could have said, okay. I don't know if you break it down and say, okay, well, if that part of that came from the sheriff, then all that money's gotta go back to the sheriff, or if part of it came from IT, then all of it's gotta go back to IT. That's like carryover. Towns that used to do carryovers, and that's like crazy accounting. But you've got 600 and some thousand dollars. You've used some of it already to reduce some expenses this year in 2026. We don't know what the balance is right now. I don't know, maybe I'm going off on a tangent.
That leads into my question. Are we over, under, or at 20%? How much is in the undesignated? I realize we don't have an audit, but
And that's 20% of budget?
I'm now gonna have to I'm gonna have to look it up again, the
Yeah.
statutes.
It's a confusing statute. I
It
looked it up. It's-
There's a lot of confusing statutes. Anyhow,
But that's what I mean, like with the TAN interest, you know, we paid 121,000. I'm sorry, we paid 128,000 in 2024 for the TAN. But then in 2025, we only paid 68,000.
88,000.
88.
And almost 20 cents.
88,000. Yeah. That was not in 88,010 dollars.
You have to combine the jail and the county.
Right, well, I took these numbers off of the other thing, I must have missed it on the jail. So,
Alright,
so 88,000, but we had budgeted 190,000 and we only paid 88. So, you know, and the idea that the year before we paid 121 and last year we only paid 88. I mean, that to me shows that we have cash on hand to pay bills because we're only borrowing. You know, we paid a higher interest rate in 2025 versus 2024. Thanks. And ultimately paid less interest means we ultimately had more cash on hand to pay bills because we didn't have to borrow as much cash to pay
So
bills.
I'm gonna make an argument against your case.
Okay.
Okay. But I'm not gonna use the employee's name out of confidentiality and to protect him, but he did an amazing job. He came to us and he asked for forgiveness, because he didn't have permission. But he saved us a bunch of money on heating. That is one that we were budgeted over on, and he saved us thousands of dollars. Those things happen throughout the year that we can't focus on. You're gonna see those things. And
I'm not sure what the point is.
my point is that you're talking about that we're budgeting too much. But we have employees in our county that are so fiscally conservative that they're saving us money almost every day.
we're not saying you're budgeting too much. What we're saying is that we're trying to identify what your undesignated fund balance is, and
Right.
it's causing us all kinds of oddities.
And if there's surplus from what we've budgeted to what we've actually expensed, where does that money go, Bob?
Yeah,
Right,
where does it go?
it goes to your undesignated, right? Wouldn't that be, some people call it surplus. I got scolded for calling it surplus when I was a selectman. Some people call it undesignated fund.
And I think they changed the name again, so,
Right, so
okay, so where are we?
You're going around the table. Everybody's.
Doug, do you have any?
You're next. We already went.
Well, I've been going as we've gone along.
So. Are we over, under, or at 20%?
In the undesignated.
And
fund.
undesignated.
Is it-
Karen, you know that off the top of your head?
I don't.
You don't, okay.
How much is and how much is undesignated? Plus or minus, call it 100,000,
It wasn't in the list of
2 million,
funds.
1 million, 10,000?
I think we're trying very hard to get to a point where clear answers to questions like these are a lot easier to come by.
Just,
And we're just not there yet. We're
Oh.
behind on audits. We're trying to offer as much support as we can for reconciling checkbooks in a timely manner, things like that.
just
Mhm.
ballpark, plus or minus a half million.
Ballpark that question.
alright, so the question is are we over or under our undesignated funds?
They don't know because they've been using some of those funds.
When
I
I
would think the
look at
question
my
is,
bank
what is
statement,
The
it tells me
undesignated
how
fund
much
balance.
money is in my bank account.
Right.
I subtract the checks that haven't been cashed yet, and I have a reasonable idea of how much money's in there.
I don't mind.
That's what I'm
but
asking.
I just need a clear, well, so are we looking for what is it, or what is the overall?
Plus or
Well, what
minus,
is
how
it
much
answers-
is, how much
what
is
is it
yeah,
answers
what's
any
the
other
dollar
questions?
amount of the undesignated, plus or minus?
Right.
Been asking for like, I've been here for a year and a half now, I still haven't gotten it, but. So another question. We've got 503,000 on the opioid settlement, what's the life expectancy of that fund? Is it supposed to be spent over 10 years, 5 years?
The fund goes from 2022 to 2038. The projections that they're showing us is gonna be around $1.6 million. I think we've got a little bit over $500,000 plus interest in that fund right now. The committee has met. They're gonna send out some grant packages, competitive grant packages to a number of organizations, to look at whether it be education, training, or prevention, for that grant funds. And so we're waiting on that. I think they've met one time, maybe two. And so we're waiting on that committee, but the grant packages are due back by the end of March.
So as it stands now, plus or minus a half a million over the next 12 years.
Plus,
Uh. Kevin, you were talking earlier about getting out of the self-funded insurance business. When would we? How many years would it be till we expect offsets from
It
that?
depends on our, the 24-month history, because anytime, if we were with a commercial carrier right now, let's say Blue Cross, and they already know our history, so they look back for the 12 months, see what's expense, see what their premium should be, and see what they think their projected revenue should be off of that, you know, besides paying the claims. Since we haven't been with a commercial insurance carrier and we've been self-funded, you know, with a stop loss insurance, they look back 24 months. And so, you know, every month we're holding up, it's more than every month, every week we're looking at claims,
Right.
trying to figure out what's dropped off. You know, is that giving us a better position to bargain with the insurance carriers with? I think at least this year, the rest of this year is before we're gonna see some daylight on that, to tell you the truth. And not to go down to disclose anything, but we've positioned a couple things differently to see if we can reduce the claims expense. And that's the major goal, is to reduce the claims expense. You know, when you look at, I think we've got roughly 120-ish covered lives, you know, all in, when you look at that, and that's not a proprietary number. When you look at that, you know, you just go, okay, you know, anything in Maine, or typically anything greater than 50 employees, you consider a large employer. I don't consider a large employer. So anything that happens, you know, on the claim side of it is a dramatic change in the percentage. So I think the rest of this year for sure. You know, I had a couple more ideas I talked over with the HR director that we're exploring, trying to figure out, is there another way to take a spin at this? And we've been talking to our broker, who's been in the business for close to 30 years with Cross Insurance, trying to figure out some alternatives to it. I think there's some room in the claims, how we can reduce some utilization. And that's what we're looking for this year. I think we gained a little bit ground in the past 6-7 weeks, a little bit. But you know, that could swing the other way too. So it's a real guessing game at this point, to tell you the truth.
My question was perhaps longer term. You know, could we be looking at $200,000 in 27 and maybe 500,000 in 28, or?
I don't have an idea right
Can't.
now. You know, we know, you know, exactly what our premiums are. You know, we know what our per employee per month cost is. We know what our stop loss insurance is. It's the claims, you know, with the stop loss that we're really trying to figure out.
Right.
And we've had, I don't know how many hours with the broker on the phone trying to work, you know, what about this? What if we looked at it this way? Have we looked at it this way? What are they doing? You know, type of thing. So it's a very slippery slope. It really is.
That was it.
Liz?
Well, as a budget committee, I know that we came together and we were looking at, first of all, the TAN and how can we mitigate the TAN. And with the budget that they proposed at the 13%, I think that would increase the amount of TAN that we would have to take and the amount that we would have to borrow. And with the cliff that we would be facing, the cliffs, I just think that it's cutting it too close, honestly. And a budget like that, coming up with what we would be facing at our this year, creating a new one, we would have a much more significant increase. So you would be kicking the can down the road.
Right.
And it would catch up to us much faster and it would be bigger. So having a much more realistic budget of a 17%. And starting there. I mean, I think that that's a starting point. Do I think that that's the end of an increase? No, I don't. Honestly, in the realistic world of budgets and business, every year of a 3% increase is a very, very small, modest increase, just to keep things afloat. That's business.
Yeah.
Every year they increase by 3%, and that's a small increase. So I hate to say it, but I think 17% is a realistic budget.
I think,
Go ahead.
now I think, in the minds of the commissioners, the 17% is a realistic budget. In my mind, we haven't come up with a sustainable budget yet. And I think that's going to mean some reduction in force, some actual reduction in force.
And how that's gonna come about, I have no idea. I'm not a wizard. I wish I had a crystal ball and I could say, I got all the answers.
I wish we all did.
Great,
Yeah.
great. I can't foresee the future there. I think there's gonna take a lot of collaboration from a lot of people to figure that one out. I can't foresee the future there. I think that's up to a lot of these commissioners and a lot of the people that are the department heads to figure this out, and a lot of the union workers. How that's all gonna come about is to unfold.
Yep.
But for the towns, I think that we would be setting them up for failure if we put the 13% in, because we're kicking the can down the road and it's gonna be a bigger monster next year or the year following. It's only gonna grow. And it's gonna be harder to swallow.
Based on the way they've set it up here.
Well, just based on the way that things go. I mean, everything gets more expensive every year that comes about, and it's a bigger pill to swallow. So cost of living just increases. Everything. So if we put off a realistic budget, it's gonna be harder. Honestly, it's gonna be harder to solve. That's my.
Okay. Lauren?
Well. Going by that mindset, I guess we'd have to start in a place that we believe that there's no waste in this budget. And that we believe we're looking at a correct budget. And so perhaps just because I'm a first year budget member, maybe that's why I have this feeling of, that I just feel like it's unacceptable that we don't even have completed audits to look at. Because the commissioners are expecting us, to vote on a budget and we don't have an audit. We don't have 23's audit. We don't know what is in, undesignated fund balance. So just a few things, that I took notes as I heard. The sticker shop with the IT it's not only that it's a sticker shop, those prices, is that because the way it's been handled, I don't know how those figures compare to what you actually spent last year and what you spent the year before. Okay, so I'd have to assume that all of those figures are really budgeted. You know, they're the bare minimum at this time. Okay, I don't get to know that because of the way it was set up. And so also, are you folks telling us that for the years that the IT was budgeted from reserve accounts, it was just the monies used from the sale of properties? Or in fact, was some of it used Because like Robin's saying, we're doing this over budgeting each year and we don't know, and the budget committee hasn't had the opportunity to look at the actuals and say, wait, you guys really don't need 200 for, 200,000 for that line because you're only spending 150. So I don't know how that was paid for all of these years. That is not fair for the budget committee to make that decision. And it's not fair for the taxpayers to not know. I would like to have a figure to take back to Freedom. I did hear you ask for that. And I think that it's fair for us to have what that number would look like for our towns. I'd like to know what, I know what, the auditor tells us in Freedom, how much we should have sitting in our capital reserve undesignated fund balance in case something happens. So I'm wondering, if the county, what that figure is, for the county. I really would like to know who does the negotiations, for the sheriff. I'm a huge supporter of law and order, huge. But it seems like there has to be a little bit of fairness for the employees and then the taxpayers, because when I look at some of the increases, I mean, from 11% all the way up to 30%. And we're Waldo County. I think that a lot of folks have, they have cause to look and say, wow, that much of a raise in 1 year? I don't get that. So I think that there needs to be some balance there and some fairness. And I just wanted to ask Carrie, so when you say that there's a negative 114,000 in the IT department already, that's because this is the first year that you've actually set up the budget for it, and so those bills have started to come in?
No.
And there's nothing there?
Let me clarify, so that we ended 2025 in the IT budget at a negative 114,000. So anything that was, so expenses were paid. The commissioners and I have not had a conversation how those are going to be funded. I am making an assumption that we are using the unexpended from 2025. No formal vote has been taken, but expenses have put us in negative 114,000.
So when you say expenses, you mean just the expenses that you had actually budgeted for example, for personnel?
No, that's out of 10, that's been raised through the budget.
Okay, so
when I talk expenses, I'm talking the software programs.
Okay.
I'm
Right.
talking,
so things that weren't actually budgeted for to begin with.
correct.
So that's why it's negative, negative.
Yes.
Yeah. It's just, I have to say, it's just really, really, it's really, really frustrating. And I understand, that the county works a little different from the municipality. And in a municipality, you wouldn't have 3 people who have, the ability to go and spend money, without the budget committee or without the people knowing and approving it. So it's a little different for me, but I think that when that happens, then the call for transparency should be that much higher and demanded. It's I'm just frustrated because I know that, some say we need to do the 17 because it's gonna get worse. And I guess I'm gonna challenge that and say, we actually don't know if it's going to get worse because we actually have such an unknown budget. We don't know what our undesignated, we don't know what our audit says. So we really don't know if it's going to get worse. That's all.
Okay.
Well, I would say that one of the things the auditors say is that the financial statements of the municipalities or the county are their responsibility. And they come in and they look at it. But we don't have their final imprimatur on that to know that, we feel comfortable with that. I'm frustrated too. I think one of the things that every time I look at this first schedule and I see the jail and I go, oh, the jail is 24% less than it was last year. That's a bunch of bullshit. That's not right. And I know why it's not right, but people who look at these schedules, look at it and they say, oh, wow, the jail's really doing good. Too bad, look at IT, they're really doing bad. And it's all these crazy percentages and, moving stuff around the way we move stuff around, or the way that the county has moved stuff around, I think makes it, might get it in the right department, but it makes it more difficult to figure out what different departments are costing you. So if you were gonna do it, I would suggest that if I were gonna do it this way and put those expenses in these departments, I would close those departments each month and charge back to the jail, to the sheriff, to everybody else, all of those administrative accounts, so that we know what it costs us in the jail, or we know what it costs us in these different places. I'm frustrated too. I don't think we can do anything with either of these budgets tonight. So, I think we as a committee need to just put our heads together and say to the commissioners, this is what I think you need to do, and see what they would do.
I'll have to go back to your point here. You asked us to put those general ledger line items back into the jail. And we did this, and it's called the integrated jail budget. And so those original general ledger lines.
Right, I saw that, but I'm just looking at this schedule, which the newspapers look, the cover schedule. That's what the newspapers look at. That's what everybody in here looks like at, and nobody besides the people on you guys and, the people on the budget committee get probably beyond this summary schedule.
So the commissioners had said that they have some obligations coming up that they need to act on because it's coming up to be an emergency. When are those deadlines?
It was due January 8th, our software bill.
I am gonna make note that there's an argument on that. And it was made last week between emergency, and I hate to say it, because I did suggest it, so I will fall on the sword. I feel like that you pay those bills out of reserve and you make an ear note and you don't call an emergency because you're setting a wrong precedence. That's my personal opinion.
So, but again, we're hearing, and I was over there saying the things until very recently. Don't keep pulling from reserves. Do this
Right.
responsibly.
Right.
And then we get $153,000 software bill that we are required to pay in order to be compliant with federal government, in order to protect privacy, and in order to do law enforcement and all these things the correct way. When I don't pay my electric bill for 2 months, they're gonna shut my electric off.
So
Yeah,
is
we can't get
that
into
bill a federally mandated expense?
I believe.
That bill is for Spillman.
I don't know.
And
what-
I'm gonna explain. Spillman is a system that's used by our law enforcement, our communication center, and our jail to log information that happens throughout the county. They also utilize Spillman to be in. You can correct me if I'm wrong, Jason, I would say that we use Spillman to be in compliance more than anything with state and federal law. Was that fair?
I can't really say how Spillman interfaces with state and federal law, but I can say that the sheriff's office, the county jail, dispatch, Belfast Police, Sears, Stockton Springs, Searsport, Islesboro, we all utilize it. So if it gets shut off, we're all going back to eating a lot of paper.
I'm gonna make it.
That's how we track our calls for service, it's how we track our inmates, it's how we
It's essential.
manage everything.
It's so down to the point of, it's how they make an arrest, bring it to the jail, and we're able to bail someone out. It's the act, yeah.
It's much bigger than that. It's how you dispatch people to fires, to vehicle
Yes.
accidents,
It's-
from the emergency side of things.
Right.
If you shut it down, it would collapse.
I feel like, and I don't disagree with Brianne about the reserve point. I feel like that if we were to go straight to utilizing emergency situations, instead of pulling to a reserve, it sends the message that I don't have to listen to you. That's what I feel. That's my own
Because you
personal.
don't have to listen to the budget
Right,
committee.
right. That's how I feel. That's why I made the argument of pulling from a reserve instead.
Well, we didn't make a decision on
No,
that
we
because we
didn't.
wanted to hear from the budget committee. We're sitting there
I am
last
not,
week with a bill.
I'm not stating anything different than what I said last week in the commissioners meeting that's on record.
I mean, it's good. Where did we pay that bill last year?
So you gotta keep in mind, last year and the year before, all of these other departments, we pulled all the IT from and we put them into this one. I would imagine that that bill was probably somewhere in the sheriff's office or in, or in, or in. Okay,
I had asked that because I was wondering if that was a strategy to keep us in compliance with the 80% that we're allowed to use. Can we pay for it, out of each of, but it wasn't, it was paid for out of reserves.
So in 2025, we paid it out of reserves.
so why are you arguing with me about?
Cause we don't have it in our budget.
Well,
Not in our
no,
twenty
you
twenty-five.
have
I'm not having any argument with you.
Okay.
Was that in our 2025 budget?
no,
No.
No, it's unbudgeted, so right now we're beholden to 80% of a budget. Of last year's budget, but if that wasn't budgeted last year, the
It wasn't
80% is
budgeted.
zero.
So it's taken out of.
We're beholden
reserves
to
last
zero
year.
for that line item, unless we do something else.
So do you guys have to send a letter to the government, the state and ask them for money like Penobscot did?
They already got turned down.
Did they?
Yeah,
I guess I would
it was a wild card, thought. They knew they were gonna get turned down.
They have no heart.
I kind of see Tim's point of if we paid it out of reserves last year and right now we're still operating with last year's budget, then temporarily at least you need to pay it out of reserves. Once we approve a budget,
I just
things
kind
will
of,
get
yeah,
moved around,
My-
right? I mean, we're not
Right.
saying we're never gonna approve a budget.
right, and I really think that perception is everything, and, instead of, calling a state statute and calling an emergency, you pull it out of reserves and you tell people what you did, you just be transparent with them. I didn't wanna give I know I'm against it, but I wouldn't wanna give the presentation to the budget committee that I can just do whatever I want. That's not how,
Pull it out of reserves, it's an actual motion and it's published.
yeah.
I mean, I don't think we should use. We're in a messy situation right now. It takes a while to figure out meeting times when we can have a quorum and all. I don't think that it serves anybody's best interest. If we. I almost feel like we're saying that, oh, well, we can't pay bills unless we approve a budget, and I don't think that's really true. So, I think,
If Robin, if it's not in 2025's budget. And it wasn't budgeted, then we can't approve it.
but you paid it last year out of reserves. So I feel like it's disingenuous to then say, oh, we can't
I know,
pay
but
for
we're
it,
trying
so
to-
you guys have to approve a budget for us
But we're
tweets.
trying to get away from that.
We are, but we're trying to do it through an actual process here where we come together on a budget. And
Sure.
so I think in the meantime, using the fact that we're still going through this process as an excuse to put pressure on the process and say, well, we can't pay bills and now we're in the, we might be
So
getting
you-
fined and all this and pay
I'm
over.
okay with putting pressure on the process and or not, delaying the process if the result is gonna be worth it. If we're gonna keep going back to the drawing board and gonna come back and it's, really, the discussion of RIFs is the one that is most
I told,
distressing, but it's also, if that's what we're talking about here, then that's what we're talking about here next, is to Mary's point. Because we can't just keep tweaking this and get the kind of results that some of you folks are talking about, so it does kind of need to be, are we okay with progress over perfection? Are we okay, or do we have some good faith here that progress is being made, that we're making better decisions than the county used to make, that we're gonna have better data moving into the next budget cycle? And pick something and move forward so that we don't keep coming up with more union grievances, so that we don't have bills that we can't pay? Or are we going to make, if this process is going to keep going on, are we going to be making some big changes? $20,000 here, or $100,000.
I think you have to make big changes.
Those big changes are more expensive
Yes,
than
they
we
are.
think, and I don't think that they get you to
That is
those
true.
numbers either,
That's true.
because we received a lot of information from HR about the true cost of a RIF. And it's not just the severance type expenses that get paid out, it's the unemployment that gets paid out, and it's also
Separation.
the rates that we pay on unemployment go up when we use unemployment, so maybe there's an immediate small savings, but you are not going to save the full cost of removing that position.
That's true.
And these are
But you
not,
haven't shown us that, or you haven't,
because it depends on the employee that gets laid off. It's very dependent on that. It's gonna be a whole different figure for someone who's been here 20 years versus someone who's been here
Right.
2.
right,
So it's
maybe
really.
get rid of the old people who are more expensive.
And then they'll have trouble paying their property tax. That's for sure.
That's a lawsuit.
That is a huge lawsuit, please don't.
So,
We're not affiliated
So-
with them.
going forward, we need to figure out going forward. One of the obstacles is trying to get the budget committee together in
Yeah.
a rather quick time.
Yes.
You know, it does take sometimes a week
Yeah, it
or a
does.
week and a half to 2 weeks for responses back. So that's one hurdle that we need to figure out tonight. How do we fix that? Second, you've got the report on the audit, the 23 audit. You know, they originally promised us, was I think the second week of March, and I think they gave themselves a little bit more time
December,
to
the
March
31st.
31st.
Yeah,
So then there's that timeline for the 23 audit, and then there's the timeline for the 24 audit. And I just had a conversation about a preemptive call with the auditor, this week about the 24 audit. So I think they're very close on wrapping up the 23s. How quickly they can do the 24s, I don't have a clue right now. You know, I was, you know, it's prepaid, so it's all paid. We don't own any money. But how quickly they can get that done, I think since they've done the 22 and 23 audits, I think they kind of figured out how to do this a little bit quicker. So I'll go back to the auditor and to the owner, Ron Smith, to your point about to see how quickly, once they close the 23, can they pull the trigger on 24s and get them done? You know, and then at the same time, ask them about the undesignated fund balance. You know, to try to clear up that question. Then the last thing is, and I still get confused on this one here, but it's the IT budget. In my past experience, IT has always been a separate department. I mean, I know in a couple of companies, they had it mixed, where it was buried into individual departments, and then I pulled it back. And so I actually knew what the costs were, and that we're getting some good negotiated prices for software and those type of things. And the security, the network was protected. Those are the things that concern me. How far back do you really want us to go, trying to figure out where the money came from IT? Because I just looked at a report here, and I think you've got it. I may be wrong on that one, but I know some of the sale agreement of the courthouse, some of the funds were used for that. And I know this was one of the assignments for us, is to go back and take a look at for 24 and 25, where what we purchased and what departments they were in. Am I correct on that, Carrie?
I think so, and I.
And Jason, am I correct?
We've been
Yeah.
working on this.
So what's the status now for the budget committee? How, we got 50% done, 60% done?
I'd say we're like at 70%. I just need to find the time to finish it, so I'll work on that. I'll make that a priority.
And you've got to remember, when you're talking rifting, that these are one-person departments. And so
yeah, I'm not talking about rift in a one-person department.
I understand. Bob.
I really think that Jason needs another person and Carrie needs another person. But we can't friggin' afford it.
I understand.
So
That's the
what's in
problem.
there for that.
And
But
so it takes time to do this research, you know, trying to.
Yeah, I
And my
understand.
point, that's what I'm saying, is it takes time to do the research, to dig out the hard copies, if we have to go back to the hard copies on this here. So to make it make sense. I do think, I mean, we can send out the narrative to you again. I took a look at it, reread it to make sure everything was current, that the numbers crossed over to the budget numbers. And to see in layman's terms, if that narrative made sense for you, because we did stand this up for 26, and we're trying to use that as the going forward, and we want to make sure it's clear for everybody. But, one, you have to be careful of security. We can't disclose, what type of switches we're buying or what age they are and stuff like that. I know, that, IT director reached out to Mr. Han. There is some savings there.
Right.
I actually reached out to another expert. There's some savings there that's potential in 26. But then you gotta think of the cycling effect. When does that contract end for the software license versus the renewal? And so that's hard to project, in a mid-year budget, we're gonna save money. Do you wanna? So you always want to overstate expenses, and that, and understate revenues, so when they flip, you look good. But we're trying to get to the middle of this road here where the revenues and the expenses are closer to a high confidence factor for everybody here in the budget committee. So that you feel careful and that you're doing a careful and thoughtful process through this so that we all get to where there's a realistic budget. I get, to go back to Laura's point, to actuals, to budgeting. I get that point. We'll go back to the table on that one there for you. I think it makes sense. It really does. We've given you a lot more information than you've ever had. And I don't know who's the longest, Mary, you the longest one, or?
No, there's
I think I
there's
am.
4 of us, I think, that are 3 years.
Okay,
Oh.
I know we've given way more information, and I don't know if it was good or not. But at the same time, we've got some accounting issues that we're trying to correct too, and whether we did them now or next year or the following year, we'd be having these same conversations, trying to figure this out, trying to figure out, okay, what's the history on this? What's a good history number? So we knew budget to actuals, because it affects us all on our tax base. I know my personal taxes have gone up $1,500 in 2 years in my town. So, this does affect us personally, everyone here. And looking across, most of the departments, I can't say 100%, but most of the departments, I look at the staffing, and I think we're very close to what we should be staffed. Now, I know the angst is the jail and the sheriff's department, and the sheriff runs the operations over there. It's statute driven. And I know how many zones we have and who covers what zones, and I know how many people are on shift at the jail. But, are we at the sweet spot? I'm not sure. Do I have a confidence factor? I think probably yes, maybe 75, 80% we're there. But to go back to Elizabeth's point, a realistic budget, because I don't want to kick the can down the road and have all of us sitting here come July and August and having that same conversation. So we're trying to clean up a lot of things, present a lot of things to you. And we want to make sure that they have a high confidence factor, and nothing's 100%, but if we're 90, 95% there, then usually I go with it myself personally. And I think maybe another way to attack this is and maybe this is preemptive, but maybe do a roll call vote and pass certain departments. If you think those departments are there, then pass them so that we can stay more focused and drill down our focus rather than stay on 12 or 22 cost centers and 12 departments. Drill down our focus on it. That's just a suggestion.
I have a question. We now are 1 person short on the budget committee. So if we take a vote and we have equal. We could.
So we're gonna ask
we
you
could
to
have-
change your vote.
We could have a tie vote. We
You
don't
can have a tie vote.
We don't
That's
have.
absolutely correct.
Where in the statutes do they
I have
think
no
about
idea
that?
on that.
Normally a tie vote turns it down. When you have equal people.
So what's that, the chair vote?
Pardon?
As the chair?
As
If it's a tie vote, then
it gets turned
it
down.
gets turned down? Okay.
The jury is locked in the room until they figure it out.
Ah,
Well, I feel like we've been there.
We've been locked in a room since August.
Yeah.
So I'm hearing budget to actual budget for 24, 25, the undesignated fund balance. I'm hearing 23 and 24 audits. And then revisit IT again. Let's finish this project up, finish the IT source documents, so we know the actual numbers of where that money came from and what it was spent on in IT.
They want 26 as well.
20, well, we're
No.
at 26, so, but actually 24 and 25. Is that right, Robin?
Yeah, I mean, if we can find out what IT was trying
But
to.
again, we do all this work and where is that gonna lead us? You know, are we gonna come back here and go,
There's things that are gonna change numbers. I'm still waiting to hear about the accounting for the expected reimbursement from the stop loss.
We've got that.
It's not
Okay.
reflected in,
I think,
Any-
I think we got some information on that for you, so we can discuss that tonight for sure.
okay, well, we have that on the agenda.
do we?
Yeah.
Employee, well,
Employee benefits was
it's
the next,
employee benefit,
yeah,
right?
was the next.
But I think we did 4 and 5. On the
Thank you.
agenda, so we'll go back to 3.
Yeah, but the-
Okay. He already has that one.
Yeah.
Oh, and we said when you were summarizing about IT, you said that you did find some savings that can be.
Potential savings.
They're also not in,
They're not in there because we're trying to get some quotes back,
okay.
but then we have to tie that, marry that up to when the contract, software contracts end.
Right,
So
okay,
that's where we're at on that.
but it's something that's potential.
It's a potential, sure.
2026.
Sure.
Okay,
Some of the 2 numbers I heard, I went, wow, you got my attention. And on the.
great, I look forward to getting ours.
No kidding. Oh, I will, but I think I did at the beginning, 37%.
We went back to the brokers and the brokers were able to pull this information for us over the past several years. So we now have a much better understanding of this. And one of the things that we discovered going back to the brokers is that we do have a deductible before we receive any reimbursement from stop loss whatsoever. So on top of the $130,000 stop loss per person, there is also a $70,000 deductible for stop loss before we would receive anything. So basically, we'd have to spend $130,000 for the person, plus an additional $70,000 for the deductible before we saw a single cent back.
Is it deductible per person or is it
Correct, we have
deductible in
deductibles
total?
per person, so let me give you an example, sorry, no, the deductible is the overall.
Overall,
So it's aggregate deductible of $70,000. But the thing is with the stop loss is the stop loss is per person, so Bob, I'm gonna pick on you. Let's say that you were driving home, so you and your spouse and baby mom were in a car accident. And each one of you was injured pretty severely. We came out with $100,000 claim for each of you. Each of you has your own stop loss. So that means we did not, even though it cost us $300,000, none of it is reimbursable because each person has their own stop loss. So it can easily become, we can have very high claims and very high expenses and not ever see a penny for it. So in your case, of that situation, that means the county pays $300,000 to cover that accident. We get nothing back. So that is the trick about the stop loss. It's not per employee, it's per covered life. So if we're talking, 125 covered lives, $130,000 stop loss per person, plus another $70,000 on that, you can do the math. We can take a very severe hit. And that's why I've been so cautious about the budget here. And then also, please keep in mind, when you're looking at these numbers, this is only from when the request was made until we received reimbursement. We already paid the claim. We paid the claim a while ago. So we had to pay this money. And then finally, once they've gone through and negotiated, said, oh yeah, this should be stop loss. Okay, well, let's assess this claim. Okay, now we determined this claim is eligible for reimbursement. That starts the timer on the paper I gave you. So this is not counting the time that it took from when we paid the claim until they're starting to look at reimbursement.
so this is these are reimbursements as of these dates.
Correct. And if you see everything underlined is a reimbursement that went into the next calendar year. So there's a lot of that. You'll see a lot of reimbursements that aren't paid out. So we paid the money, we paid the claim. We're not getting any kind of reimbursement for it until the next year. I cannot give you the details on when the actual claim was paid, because that would be potentially identifying information.
It's just fine, but you can give us an idea of when do you make the request for
We
reimbursement?
don't make this request. This comes from they're going, so in that claim, Bob was in the car accident. They go back through, let's change it again. Bob was in the car accident by himself and it was a $300,000 claim. So again, we pay upfront. We get that, here's your $300,000 bill. We pay it. We get it. There we go. So then here's this $300,000. We know we're on the hook for $130,000. We further know there's a $70,000 deductible we have to pay before they'll even begin to look at any kind of stop loss. So that only leaves $100,000 there. I was explained before, when we have that $100,000 bill, what we're doing is the insurance company goes to, well, the hospital goes to the insurance company and says, well, this is what it is. And the insurance company goes, nope, and they negotiate it down. And they say, this should be stop loss. And we said, well, let's look at the other claim. Let's calculate all the numbers in. We're still waiting on something. You talk to, one doctor who is a specialist and we need to wait on that bill. So that may come in as another separate bill. This is not all one chunk. These are all different little discrete pieces that are adding up to this $300,000 total. So, I saw one for $84. We had a stop loss reimbursement for $84. Ooh, a
So
$2.5
Tracy,
million.
what was our total reimbursement for stop loss in 25?
And 25.
Calendar
Look at
25.
that. You have to look at it here, and if you notice, the reimbursement date lists into 2026, so we would have to break that out between 2025 and 2026. So again, that time frame between when we pay it and they go through and they negotiate what's stop loss, what's included, what isn't, each
So-
individual claim.
Right, but-
Slow down pretty small, sorry.
So for 2025, you can see if you look at the 2025 one, some of those are not reimbursed until 2026. So I would actually have to sit down and break out each one of these into whether it's 2025 or 2026 to give you that total.
Okay,
but
so
some
the
of the
ones
twenty
from,
twenty-fours were reversed in 2025.
Correct, so I'd have to break
Point
out
is,
every single one of
It
these.
is an ongoing thing,
Yeah,
yeah.
I only just got this today, so I didn't have the time to break this out into individual units.
I have a question why it looks like the deductible came out twice in 2023.
It did not, it's just how it's listed. If you look at the grand total at the bottom. You can see the,
Okay,
there's $70,000 there, the grand total that I underlined at the bottom. The variance is the same thing, because that's the variance is what wasn't paid, because that was part of the deductible.
So in 23, if I'm reading this right, it's $186,349.89. Is that right?
That was the request.
And then we received $116,349.89.
And all of the underlined ones were actually not paid in 23, they were paid in 24.
So
You see.
they take out the $70,000 on top. We gotta hit the 70 first.
Correct.
Okay.
does that give you enough
Is
information?
that the information you're looking for, Rob?
Yep. I think this helps.
Okay.
And all of this just goes back into the funds, into the healthcare funds. Because again, it came out as a healthcare funds in the first place, you wouldn't have to pay it up front.
When you say healthcare funds,
But.
you mean the healthcare,
For
the
healthcare.
reserve,
Yeah, there is just one fund.
right?
And so everything with the health fund stays in the health fund.
Right.
So is there any other numbers, Robin, that you're looking for? I mean, I think this was the one that was the stop.
Well, I don't really know, what does this mean, the far right column that says ag spec deductible?
Yep, that's what it is. That's that $70,000. That's our full deductible for the year before anything else is paid. You'll see it's $70,000 if you look at each of those ones, except there's an anomaly in 2025 and they're researching why the deductible in 2025 is $112,000 versus 70. So they'll get back to me on that one.
And then
Presumably they'll be paying us.
If
back
they,
the-
because they can also deny claims. So
Okay,
if that's not.
so we may
being
pay a
denied
claim that they'll pay.
Correct.
So the other thing too, that it's three distinctive, calendar years for these policies. So in 23, the limit was $100,000 per family.
Oh, yeah.
And then 120 per individual in 24, and then 25 is 120. I know we're at 130 for 26.
Correct. So it'll be even more before we
Per
hit
individual.
it.
No.
And then that $70,000 deductible, before we ever pay, before we ever get a.
So it's 2570, right, on the deductible,
Sorry,
25 is 70,000,
correct.
okay.
Yeah, and 26 is also 70,000.
I'd like to make sure I understand too. So if I go down the 25 schedule and go down to a claim that was processed on December 9. I see the claim was processed and then I see we received the reimbursement in 2026
Correct,
on the 14th,
correct.
which is a pretty quick turnaround.
Well, yes, but that does not talk about when we paid the
Right,
claim.
it's the request was made on December 9th.
And do you make the request?
No,
That's what
it's
No.
the insurance company.
Insurance company.
Insurance side of it, Bob.
That's what I was trying to.
So that claim was money back,
So it's,
probably paid
Yeah,
30 or 60 days prior.
I mean, I'm just I was curious about that.
well, so presumably if they deny something, there is no request then.
So I've asked for a clarification on the denial process. But again, I only received this today, so I'm trying to find out what happens when a claim is denied.
Got it.
Well, why don't you see if you can work with this
No,
and see what,
this is, I can,
and if you need more, we'll ask for them.
okay.
No, is there anything
Item
else?
6, Paul.
Pardon?
I think you're down to item 6 on the,
Yep. Okay, and we got the schedule of the reserve accounts. Okay, so we've gotten that.
Is there
Did
any
any-
questions on reserve accounts?
Anybody have a question on the reserve accounts?
Get back to the.
If there's none, then we will consider.
Well, I think Robin's got a question.
I still pull it out. What are they? Where's, I mean, you must have a sheet somewhere
real
that
cash.
has a little description of what each fund is.
They were, that was emailed to you last Friday.
Okay. The descriptors, I mean, the explanation, not, this wasn't emailed.
That was emailed along.
This was, right.
That along with the other the reserve accounts, all of that was.
Oh, okay, I think I missed seeing that.
And not every reserve has a description. And some of them list the statutory requirements. And I do not know why there's not a description.
Do people here know, for the accounts that don't have a description, what the description is?
There are mysteries. I even talked to, sorry to put you on the spot, even talked to Barb in the former finance director, and there is no language, I can't find any.
Right.
So Robin, we have to be very careful with the reserve accounts and the language. And before we do anything with reserve accounts to change them, we need, to notify the state auditor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do we know, I mean, it feels like a project should be to identify the mystery reserve accounts. I'm saying for a commissioner, and for you, Carrie, because you got enough to do, but to kind of begin the process of trying to, okay.
Yeah, we're also supposed to give the state auditor our audits, and the state auditor didn't come back to you guys and say, hey, where the hell's your audits for the last 3 years, did they?
No, they didn't, and they didn't do that.
Hey, what are they, a historian?
So there's
You know,
actually,
so,
there's actually a bill, I can't remember the LD number right now. But municipalities, and counties about what's the penalty for not turning in your audit, so what's the time period? I think it's gonna be a year, I think it's the language they're working on right now. But it's just, it's counties and municipalities, so that's on the state end.
yeah.
But we do have very clear descriptions for most of them,
Yeah.
and that you said that was provided, there's a list of reserves that are not being changed, and then there are the ones that are being that went to the state auditor to be proposed to be combined, so that we don't have the 42 checklists anymore, and there is a clear, this is what the description of each one was, and this is what the description is in the proposed.
Is that the,
That's what
That's
that
what
was,
was
you should
attached.
have that,
Yeah.
I guess.
I know there were like 4 attachments and I bet I never got to that one.
It went out, the proposed went out, Karen?
The proposed went out to the budget committee along with the unchange. And so when you open it up, it makes sense to me when I set it up, but it shows you the purpose of the reserves that have a description.
Right.
Their current target, which has not been updated since, I think, 2015 or 2017, the current balance. And then you'll see that there is a new consolidated name for a bunch of them and what that new language looks like. That proposed changes has already gone to the auditor, and I am waiting for the official letter from them to see if they are okay with that.
Okay.
And then there's a bunch of reserves that are currently unchanged that do have descriptions. There's 3 reserves that are statutorily required. And then a handful that do not have any description. I have not found any description for those. I do not know why. I've been looking for them since I've started and but there, I know Kevin and I have started working on kind of some of this.
We have to be very careful with the reserves and the state auditor. I
Yeah.
talked to their office and we notified them, I think on November 8th, we sent a letter to them. They're in agreement, but each one that we consolidate, let's say facilities, they wouldn't have an issue with that. There's a number of facilities ones there, but we have to, it's a step-by-step process. They are very mindful of what occurs in, when you consolidate reserve accounts or create a reserve account. So we have to be very careful with that. We have to be in compliance with their requirements.
May I ask you, Carrie, why, maybe I'm just not understanding, why is there a capital reserve account for IT and why is that where their negative fund balance goes up?
Cause that's the bills that have been provided in 2025 were
Right.
expensive to do that, and so we have.
To a reserve account? But I thought that. So did you have a specific IT reserve account that you were paying their budget from? So what you would do is you created this reserve account and then you would just take money from the undesignated fund balance and put it in the reserve account?
So none of us created it, it was for all of us. Just wanna clarify more. But my understanding when I was on budget committee was that if there was money left over, it would get pushed into that reserve, and then it would get pulled out of that reserve to pay for the IT bills. That was my understanding when I was sitting on budget committee. But that was done before honestly, anybody that's sitting here.
Yeah,
Was the budget committee, is the budget committee given a list each
No,
year of
not
reserve account?
No.
Well, I mean, we heard, oh yeah, we have some reserves. We heard a lot of stuff, but we never understood how the reserves played against the expenses. And the budgets that we approved in previously, if they didn't have an expense in it, we didn't approve that spending, but the county spent and took it against the reserve, which, you know. As a budget committee, I'd like to see what your total expense is and not, and then show me somewhere else that you're covering it with a reserve or covering it with tax money. Any other questions on that? All right,
9 reserves accounts, I count 32 in there.
32.
The 29 and the 1.8 million is as of 12/31/25. This chart is 32 accounts, and I think it totals 1,976,024.
Yeah. And this is also as of 12/31.
Is it?
25, is it 12/31/25?
I thought it was as of today or
no,
Friday.
it's as of
Whenever you looked at it.
whenever I updated it.
Okay,
So that email be sort of, or no.
Yeah,
so okay, we haven't done the budget yet, so.
so hold on just a second. I think that there was an error
Yeah.
in a document that was sent to you.
Which document?
It would be the reserve one, so I'm gonna update and, well, not update, I'm gonna send you the file that has all the other reserve information.
So this is the one you're saying you're gonna update?
No, that's staying the same, I'm sending you the reserve language. forms. I thought that was sent to you on
I don't
Friday.
think it was.
I apologize that I must have dropped one of them. that
Yeah,
he forwarded to
I'm
me, so
pretty
I
good about my
apologize for
emails
that.
and I didn't get it.
My fault.
Okay, anything else on the reserves?
And that's the same thing about the severance. That's a reserve.
Yes, and we have specific things that are expense to that account.
I can give you a little history on that. Back for many years, each department had to try to guess how many people they were gonna keep or who would be retired, and it was just too hard, and sometimes it would drain the personnel lines of the budget if you had 2 or 3 people that just decided to leave. So the commissioners back a number, well, probably 15 years ago or maybe longer, decided they needed to create a reserve account, so those unexpected things that would come up when someone would leave, it wouldn't be the department head trying to figure it out. And the auditors over the years have told us that it's not been up where it should be, that you should try to estimate, estimate how many people from your entire county departments might be retiring or resigning or what have you, and so it's been better than draining a department's budget personnel lines because they just didn't foresee it coming. So that was the purpose for that reserve.
But now it's woefully understated.
Yes. So any RIFs would hit that account,
Yeah.
unemployment hits that account. Our sheriff's office and jail, they have, when they go to basic law enforcement school. When they recruit somebody that's been at basic law enforcement school and they're within a 5-year.
Six.
Oh, from
Year.
another town.
We have to pay that town or county a percentage back to them. And the money that, if vice versa, we get that money goes into that reserve, into severance. Reitman has been coming out of severance. Separation comes out of severance. Sign-on bonuses have been coming out of severance. And the list kind of goes on.
Why would the sign-on bonus come out of severance?
That is where the former commissioners have assigned
Yeah,
it.
put it, okay,
Because that came up suddenly as well.
gotcha.
And so that wasn't budgeted for, it's
Correct.
just that what's gone into the severance account is whatever's left over at the end of the year, you take an amount and put it in.
And as I stated about IT and myself going to the former board and asking for an IT budget and being turned down, the same thing was happening with our severance as well. When you're told no, your hands are tied and.
So can I ask just then a question about how this goes, because, I read a comment. That. And so I guess I wanna know the responsibility of the elected treasurer, because I read a comment. That he, happened to make that the budget committee was educated people, and those were his parentheses, not mine. And so that we should have, answers, to some of the questions that were asked, and, I sort of took a little bit of offense to that, because I think this budget committee this year has been asking a lot of questions. And, he's the elected treasurer, and so I'm just wondering, what is the role, of the treasurer? In his educated position to, say, hey, commissioners, you really should be having an IT budget. And, you should have this, severance budget. Where's the elected treasurer's role in all of this?
Good
That's a
question.
really
Do
great.
not give an answer unless it's Maine state statute, because I guarantee that we're not gonna have the same opinion.
You want to answer that? Yeah. Take a strike.
I'm not gonna give an answer unless it's.
You know, I might have
statute.
been just a
No
little
way.
facetious here saying a comment, just because I didn't appreciate that he described us as
Well,
educated
so-
with quotations.
I'll respond to this. I don't wanna take credit for his comment, so I don't know what was said. I am sorry. For what was said, if there was any offense. That is, they are their own individual. I don't know what the comment is. When it comes to his role, I know that over this last year, we have had conversations on what kind of role we would want him to have. And that role has changed quite a bit. Statually, I don't know what the actual textbook like. The way I look at it is he would be coming in to look over warrants and reconcile accounts. That would be my personal, not the board's answer. But
I know some of the history on it, Laura. They had a time treasurer, David Parkman, and David Parkman had, some medical problem, and he left. When he left, that left the treasurer position open. I think it was Peter Schiff.
Yeah.
Peter Schiff was elected to the treasurer position. When he came on board, they took the treasurer's salary and just decimated it to just about nothing. And Peter Schiff eventually moved to Florida, and that position wasn't filled. Eventually, it got filled by the governor. But you pay $2,500 a year for a treasurer and you get what you pay for, and I think your treasurer basically just looks at your warrants and signs off on your weekly warrants. Is that about right? The one you have now?
that was the last of what I recall us getting him for a job duty, but that. I don't have it in front of me.
I think that currently, yes, he comes in weekly, checks in, asks what needs to be done. And yes, he's reviewing our warrants that has been reinstated. I think that the statutes need to be revisited and that the commissioners need to relook at that.
There's a lot of the word may in the statute. I've pulled it up now and just taken a quick look at the duties, and I don't wanna take us off the rail in that discussion, but that information is available and to your point, educated is not a very nice thing to say.
All right.
So Bob, just to clarify on item the 6, the reserve accounts, so that the only issue on this is to send out the proposed language to all the budget committee members.
That's
Is
correct.
that accurate? Are there any more questions on it?
I don't think so.
I-
Oh,
Robin?
sorry.
I always have a question.
You-
Yeah. Thank you for giving me this. The reserves, the existing ones that are being proposed to put into county disaster response. It looks like there's a third one here. Right by them, number 251. It says it's EMA equipment. That's the good fit to roll in.
I've talked to Dale
Oh,
and he wants that remain separate.
separate.
Right.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I'd like to make one comment on the discussion of severance and reserves, that if RIFs are to be considered, that needs to be considered, that the severance line item is, in the whole 55,000, so that needs to be accounted for in the budget if RIFs are part of the budget.
So it would almost end up being a wash.
Well, and it's hard to predict because we don't know the specifics of who
Right.
may or may not be involved in
But you could estimate,
Well,
would you not?
No, because there are so many different contracts, there's so many different requirements.
I know, I mean, we keep saying there's so many different this and so many different that, but I can estimate a lot of things. I might be wrong in my estimates.
I think it gets very personal because you're asking, who are you laying off
yeah.
Right.
before approving a budget? In order to make that estimate.
Well, I think you've gotta go through that exercise.
And I guess with that, and this is this is not this line item, but if we're talking about RIFs and if we can for a minute or two longer, maybe, I'm curious if the budget committee, those who are considering that as an option, think that the county is staffed more than it needs to be, or if the thought is that whether or not we're staffed more than we need to be, we need to have RIFs anyways.
My,
Philosophically, I guess.
okay.
Yeah,
My thought on it is that. The county can't afford, the county residents can't afford to pay what we're paying. Out on salaries. And so the only way we're gonna be able to get a budget that people will accept is if we. Reduce the number of people that we're paying.
when you say people accept, you mean this group of people, or do you mean?
I mean, the 93 people in the county.
Right.
And you're not gonna take one, if you only have one person in a department, you're probably not gonna take that
Right,
person out.
and so really, we're talking about comms and we're talking about corrections and.
You're talking about comms and
Sure.
corrections and sure.
And it's my understanding from talking with those departments and this whole group has talked with those departments is that their staffing is really based on what the need is. It's not. It's
That's
not
good.
overdoing it. You call 911, you need someone to be there.
They should have them there. I mean, that's
And our
my
towns don't
opinion.
have-
That's why.
Most of them don't have police departments, so we're,
Yeah.
we're saving on that end in our towns by not having to do it ourselves, but.
My only comment is, we haven't as a committee discussed reduction in force.
No,
I mean, I personally not in favor of any reduction in force, but. I'm more wondering things like the reserve for vehicle improve. I don't know, 264, there's 115,000 in it. Is that something that can? My question is, I remember.
Is it the appropriate funding in that, for that reserve account?
Well, Jason, I remember a couple of years ago saying how, we're changing from owning our cars and buying new to leasing.
Right.
Isn't this a reserve that was related to this cyclical,
But you still,
funding this? So if we're not owning anymore, is this a source?
but that
for
was
helping
for
leasing?
the deputies though. We still have other county vehicles that still need that line.
Okay,
Because for the deputies, and I'm totally speaking out of turn here, like, they put a lot of miles on their vehicles. There's only what I've heard from Matt, so I don't know, and I'm sorry, Matt, throwing you on the bus. But like, they recycle through those so much that he has it staggered with this formula about how much wear and tear is going on them, that it actually saved us money to go fleet than to own. And because of the fleet part, we got a really good discount on it.
it may have saved us money, but not in the budget, because the rental, the leasing stuff in the budget is higher than, we were. What we're putting away for a car.
But that's not true, because when we were having significant issues with those vehicles, a lot of those leases were like covering like. When an engine would go, or a transmission, or like significant major issues, there was a lot more to that.
But how many non-leased vehicles
Non-leased,
do we have? Like, do we still?
gosh, oh,
She's in
jeez.
3, 4, 5, 6. 6 that are not in the jail or the sheriff's. And of those 6, they're all, the latest model is a 2018. So either they were paid with some grant funds, like in the case of EMA.
Right.
There's 3 vehicles out there. I think those are 2005 and 2004 command and communication vehicles paid for grant funds. There's a 2018 Jeep out there that's paid for. I think in the case of there's a 2015 truck out there.
Right.
And in the case of facilities, there's 2 trucks and they're 2000. No, they're older than that, 15, I believe, paid for. So, historically with the vehicles, before the lease program, if there was a need in another department and they hit the mileage requirement, let's call it 100,000 miles, then they would roll it, they would downgrade that chase vehicle to another department or within the sheriff's department. So in the case of jail right now, I know they've got a ban that's transmissions out. And they've got another issue, and they use the van for, the van's used for transporting the residents or inmates to Somerset. And there's another vehicle they've got some major issues with right now. So historically, that number has probably been there for those reasons, is to fix, as the Tim said, major issues, transmissions or engines. And to see if it's worth putting the money back into that vehicle. I know when they do lease out now, the ones that we've got leased out, they hit a certain point, then they're automatically go to auction. Because their matrix of maintenance and mileage and gas per miles and all that stuff is extremely detailed.
Well, and Matt also said too, now that I remember it, they were totally outfitting those vehicles for us too, and that was a cost that we
Yeah.
were no longer absorbing because of that too. And by outfitting,
But we'll
we're
certainly take a look at that
the
reserve.
cage, the laptop, the.
No, well, I was just curious, because we have some reserves here that have fairly decent looking balances. And
Sure,
just making
right.
sure that.
They're needed.
Well,
The
or
vehicle
that,
replacement is also used in the event that there is an accident. I don't remember if that was said. As well, so, you know.
We don't need to talk about car deer accidents. Okay.
Is there any other particular account that catches your eye?
well, I have no idea what. 223, it says MCRRC cap / restricted CCA. And
That's
it's.
Community Corrections Act money, I believe.
Do you have a range on that one? What's that one, Carrie?
That's your
That's-
CCA funds, that's what we get from the state and has to be used for like the garden. VOA, Maine pretrial, whatever,
That's part of that,
Community
like the
service.
783 that's budgeted.
that 783, only a percentage of that can be used for CCA funds.
Oh, okay,
And so is that
But-
percentage then taken out of that and put in the reserve
Yes,
for CCA?
and it's 25 or 30%, yes.
So the number that we see in the budget, is that a gross number or a net number?
Jason, gross or net? That 788,
That's the gross number.
That includes anything that you need to do and
So when the state sends us the check, they send us a check. 25% of that has to be designated CCA funding.
so it gets put
The
in,
large number that you see is the gross amount that we get. 25% have to be designated as CCA funding.
and so I'm assuming that you cash the check. And put the 25% in this reserve account, right, so that you can
Yes.
pay for those funds out of that reserve. And
But
so,
then, but those numbers then are also reflected in the jail budget? The actual cost? Cause I guess Volunteers of America is part of that 25%?
So it depends on when you're talking about. If you're talking pre this board, I really can't tell you. That would have to be somebody that, like Carrie, that tells you how that was managed prior to this board. I can tell you that this board, having Kevin as my point person, we've actually had a dialogue about those particular funds and how they can be used. As a matter of fact, when we were asked in January to come back and revisit our budget, that was one of the funds that we went to reduce our VOA line by $100,000.
Yeah.
And when you look at this year's budget, Matt and I included in there our recommendation about how the 25% CCA funding should get used within our budget. But again, recognizing that we're merely operations and the commissioners control the actual financial side of the house, we just made our recommendations as to how we would recommend to apply that 25%. Previous to this board, we've never had those conversations. It was handled by the previous board of commissioners, however they saw fit.
so is there another reserve account in here where other components of the other 75% goes? Or is the other 75% not restricted?
It's not restricted, that is used to offset the jail budget, so when you're looking at that non-integrated or integrated jail budget. You'll see that their budget is reduced by that state amount.
Right. Just as a lump off the bottom.
Yes,
I'm sorry, I have one more question over the reserves. I just wanna understand. You have, a reserve account named employment security. And so it's an ongoing account in lieu of the county paying unemployment. But of course, the county, we pay unemployment, and so in what circumstance would the county, if somebody is unemployed, pay any expenses or any unemployment that wouldn't be paid by the state unemployment?
We have to reimburse the state for unemployment. We don't pay unemployment. They send us a bill and we
Sure.
have to pay them.
Right, we all have our unemployment costs, right? I mean, as an employer, I have my unemployment that I pay. So are you saying that if anybody, you pay your weekly, your unemployment, or how does it monthly? So you're saying the county also completely 100% funds, we don't have unemployment insurance?
Correct.
So the county funds unemployment.
Yes,
So why isn't it in the budget?
we've been,
We don't have it in the budget, right? We have a reserve account for it with $10,000 in it. It has a target of 150 and a new target of 350. And so why wouldn't it be in the budget?
great question.
That's the kind of things that I think, yeah, that's really crazy, because then we know where we have Robin, all that money that is, we over budget for, and then it gets moved into these kind of accounts that taxpayers don't see, instead of just having it in the budget and knowing that we completely fund unemployment and budget for it.
And since I've been here, we've only paid the state for maybe 6 months of unemployment in the last 3 years. It's not a common expense that we see.
Right. My understanding when I came to work, it was that was the least expensive way to do it. You kind of took a gamble hoping that you weren't gonna have to pay too much unemployment, and it has proven to be cheaper than doing it the other way.
Okay, so when somebody up there, maybe, you said that if we happen to get rid of someone or lay someone off, actually, our unemployment costs wouldn't go up because we don't pay unemployment insurance.
No, but we have to pay the state of Maine for the unemployment
Claim.
claim.
But we don't cover the claim? I mean, I thought.
I
guess
think
I'm
what she said
confused.
is that the county covers the claim,
Right,
that the employee goes to the state and says, hey, I'm not working any, I need unemployment. The state then bills the county and the county pays that amount. The
Right.
county doesn't have unemployment insurance, which would generally cover that.
so just because even though we are funding our own unemployment, and the state is acting as a middleman for us, they would charge more, even though we're paying it ourselves?
So when you say I'm an employee,
Mm-hmm,
I am not paying unemployment. Unemployment does not come out of my weekly
Right.
paycheck. So I go to the state,
mm-hmm,
I claim unemployment,
mm-hmm,
and the state of Maine is going to pay me.
mm-hmm.
Then the state of Maine turns around and says, the county of Waldo, I have paid Carrie
Right,
$1,000, you owe me $1,000.
so the county has to 100%
So,
reimburse.
so the question is, if that person is no longer an employee, and they're unemployed, we were the reason they were unemployed, we still have to pay that unemployment?
Absolutely.
Mhm.
If we layoffs are always fully eligible for unemployment.
With cause,
For how long?
Chris?
Depends on the individual person, how long they've claimed, what they're currently making, state's determination.
And Laura, to go back to your point about the proposed funding level for that.
Yeah.
Remember, that's all proposed language in there and the funding level amount. That's something the commissioners we have to sit down and figure out. That's gonna be a slow process because the state auditor's not gonna move fast on these reserve accounts.
And the reason for that big increase was because it was combining that specific line item you saw, the reserve that had the 10,000
Yeah.
with separates. So that's why it was such a higher amount than what was recommended for just that smaller reserve account.
Does that answer your question on that? You need
Yes.
to think about it.
I am thinking, so I'm trying
That's
to
okay.
think just, and so when you said it was a cheaper option, so we have, are you saying, cause I just wanna understand this, are you saying that we have an option if we like buy insurance and pay, say monthly or whatnot, that then we wouldn't need to reimburse the state, but we're paying monthly or?
I would wanna research what our
Okay.
options are, cause I'm not sure. I believe.
That would be a major
Yeah.
research question.
And a lot of
Yeah.
those too, in other places I've been, even though we have unemployment insurance, if there's unemployment claims, the state will still bill us for portions of it. So that does not absolve us of having to pay back the state, even if we have that more expensive unemployment insurance. So we're just ending up having to double dip instead of using this account.
Any other questions on the reserves? All right. Let's get to the last point, which was the big one. Pardon?
Is it point?
A moot point?
Be called for adjournment.
I don't know. I mean, I'd like to know. I mean, we
If
keep,
there's other questions. I mean, we've kind of gone through the schedule here, but has it stimulated anybody else on the budget committee for us for homework to do? Because some of this stuff takes a few days to research,
right,
and I'd rather be proactive than rather than reactive and getting an email a day before the day of a budget meeting.
Yep.
I'd like to ask a question as a taxpayer. Kevin, you said something earlier about passing partial budget on things that, may agree on at that
Sure.
point. But is that even legal to do that? And is that doesn't seem like a very good idea at all to me.
I just put it out there as an option.
I'm just saying out loud because if we approve 3 things out of a budget, and
Right,
then turn around and say, that can't be approved because we gotta cut more.
understood.
By the sounds of this budget that we have, it can't be passed. I mean, this 13 or 17% to any taxpayer right now is way over the limit. Anything that I see and hear right here, Mary, you made a great point right off the get-go. Dire straits. This is dire straits and cuts do happen. And yes, you may pay severance, you may pay this, but over time, it comes back. You don't pay that anymore after a certain amount of time. That's how corporations and businesses run all over the place. It's a no-brainer in the end of this. that
yeah,
to
and
get
if,
to a certain point,
if we don't,
accept 17% right now, or 13% right now, and think that next year, that they're not gonna ask for 3% more or 4% more on top of this. And cause it's gonna happen,
right.
we can't do it, these people can't do it, these people in Waldo County cannot do this. You guys know it right there, all you guys up there, commissioners know it too. We just, there's more to be done here, and there's so many unanswered questions, I've been coming to these meetings. And we're playing roundabout over and over, not getting, yes, you guys are doing a great job, all of you, and working hard to get more answers, but we're not even close. 13% is not close on if we had to make personnel cuts. We should have already been looking at making personnel cuts, didn't mean we had to do it. But we should know numbers on what happens when we do make that cut on a low paid position, a high paid position, whatever it may be. We should be looking at the amount of vehicles that the county pays for, Do we need all of those vehicles? Can they share some of these vehicles? You know, this stuff should be talked about that can make big cuts. And unfortunately, they hurt. They're gonna hurt somebody, they're gonna hurt all of us. But the taxpayers can't take this 13 or 17% and then have us, tell us next year, it's only gonna be 6 more this year, after we just took this hit. Cause that's what's gonna happen.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So I think that gets to the point of a sustainable budget. We need to come up with a budget that we're not. I don't know how we get to a sustainable, I'm kind of like him. I don't know how we get to sustainable budget and to get as many people, as much money as I think we need to get out of the budget without doing some personnel cuts. So I guess if I have an ask, I would ask the commissioners to try to calculate what they'd need to get down to, say, a budget of $14 million, which would be like a 9.5% increase. But that's me, that's not the committee. So one of the things I'd like to do is come to an agreement as to what we ought to ask the commissioners to do.
Bob, would you look at this, please?
What is that?
This is that subsection 706 we've kicked around and talked about many times. Several copies for everybody there. I believe the target number you're gonna be shooting for is under 10% to fall within line of that 706 funding.
706 funded, I don't know what 706 is. Is that the percentage that,
The percentage,
they calculated that at 18.3%?
that's a bogus number. You and I both know that. You're going on, you're gonna go on, I got some for the commissioners as well. You're gonna go on your assessed value, local assessed value. And in my town, that's less than 1% this year increase on new real estate, which is studied in there. You look in your town, you know the same thing. I doubt there's a town in this county that's over 3%. Plus your increase in wages, which I doubt is over 6%.
I'll look at this before the next meeting.
But there is a remedy in there that can be petitioned if you pass a budget that's over that amount. It can be petitioned and it will be forced to be voted on by the people to allow you to exceed that.
Okay, thank you. So that brings us back to the question that you did ask our attorney to calculate that amount, and the attorney came back with 18.33%
It
of
was 18.33, correct?
18 point.
18 point something.
18
Yes.
and change from.
Yeah,
Was he using the state valuation?
Yes,
Yeah,
That's not what they used.
yes, it is.
yes, it is.
That's what they use to divide the pie up on who buys whatever, but if you read that right there, that is assessed, it's assessed value on first build expansions.
okay. Did the attorney give us a letter or anything on that?
He gave us an email, man.
An email? Can you copy me on the email?
Yeah.
And then I'll look at this.
They would have had to notify every town to get that information.
I'll go back.
Okay, thanks. So let's get back to where we were. What do we want to tell the commissioners to do? Do we want to give them a target?
Under 10%.
I thought we did last.
Yeah, we
time.
did last meeting.
We did.
Pardon?
No,
Last
it was not as a committee.
We did.
Yeah.
I think we went down through.
Well, we talked about, I mean, Mary said, 12%, and I said 10%, under 10%. Doug said
I
under
did.
10%.
Some people didn't give a percent.
No,
I think that a number is one thing, but I think what,
what is realistic is.
well, no, not just the number, but specifically what, because it's mixed messages. It's don't pull from reserves. It's don't use last year's money. It's do RIFs, don't do RIFs. So I, as a commissioner, looking back at if we're gonna do more rounds of this, I'd like to know what are the values that are guiding the next level, the next round of cuts?
I hate to say this, but I'm gonna fall short again here. What I remember was that you guys pushed it back to us.
We did.
With the attempt to go lower.
Yep.
And now you are getting the response of two very different opinions.
Yep.
Yes.
So,
With both of which we
I hate
think,
to say it, but I think that your motion needs to be more black and white. and not just push it back to us, but actually have a sword, because there's a difference of opinion.
I'll make a motion to keep the budget increase under 10%.
I'll second that. Got a motion and a second, discussion?
I was thinking of something different, so I don't know exactly how
What
to.
do you think,
how to-
Robin?
You can amend it.
Well, with the fact that the actuals are consistently coming in so far below the budgets. And looking at the difference, I was thinking that, I mean, if you took the 2025 actual and inflated that by 10%. You get 14,257. I mean, that would be a 10% increase over last year's actual expense, which that number over last year's budget is by that. Whoops. Is a 4.7% increase. Does that make sense? I'm saying in 2025,
Yeah. The
we
actual.
spent a total of 12,961,000.
Yeah,
If you inflate that by 10% for 2026, you get 14,257. If you compare that as say that's a target bottom line budget, you take that divided by the 2025 budget and you get a 4.8% increase in the budget if you took that amount. I'm saying it kind of gives
Yeah,
what they
now
actually
I'm
spent,
confused.
it increases it by 10%, which still is tight because of all those things that weren't in the budget that, you know.
but if I take $14 million and compare it to the budget from last year,
Well,
the
budget
total
last year
budget,
should be the 13.6.
no, it's 12. I think it was 12 something. Where was it?
Oh, here it is.
Do you have it? Yeah, 12,778.
That's got that net, that 700,000, 800,000, 829,000 from last year.
From the jail.
Yeah, well, it's
Well, I
out of
see.
that number. That number is lower. Last year's number was 4.9 million, and then we took out 800,000. So if you take the 12,778
Wasn't either.
plus the 829, whoops. Need an equal sign. Get 13.6 as last year's budget. I mean, this number, that total for 2025 is net of 829,000 that.
The 829,000 is
Is-
out of this number.
Right, if we throw that back in, is what I'm saying. It brings it up to that number, because that's what our actual budget is. With adding up all those department totals.
I hear what you're saying. So what's under 10%?
Well, I guess what I'm saying is, well, what's under 10%? Well, so that
So
should be
a final dollar number.
equals that times 14.9.
14.9.
That's a 10% increase over last year's.
So the question is the.
It would be, well, if you want to subtract out that would be minus the 7, this year's is what, 780 something. It's not, last year was 829.
Yeah, it
right?
goes down.
This
every
year it's only 788.
Yeah, thank you, Governor
Right.
and Legislature.
So, I don't know, what is that equals 14,969 minus 778. 14,191.
14.9.
14,2.
14. I'll go with
What number are we talking now?
Yeah.
your total budget, bottom line. Not including
Well,
the jail, not including the jail reimbursement.
if we don't include that, then it's that number.
Robin, you're getting me confused.
That's the
This
number Well, when you say not including,
That's where you here you took it
Okay.
out.
right,
That's
okay.
not included.
My brain went the opposite way with that. So you mean like net of the
Net
jail?
of the jail stuff.
Right.
Because we don't know what the governor is gonna do next year.
True,
She may not give us anything,
That's absolutely accurate.
you
true.
know? They may sit on their hands and say, well, go ahead. Jam it down the throat of your,
Appropriations tomorrow.
pardon?
It's in appropriations tomorrow in the jail. We're expecting zero, but we're gonna still be there
For next year?
this year.
For
Yeah, well, yeah.
2026?
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't know what it's gonna be. So if
Well-
we pull that out, their total budget is,
But pulling that out implies that we think we'll get it. That's what I mean.
okay,
If you want to totally assume nothing, then it's that number, the 14.9.
14.9. Yeah, I have to sit down and,
That's because
What's
these
that?
numbers,
these
Took
numbers
out-
aren't right?
they took out the state, what the state gave us, the
They did.
829,000. These are net of that.
They are.
But if you're saying that you want to assume that the state's not going to give us any money at all,
We have to bump that
then
up.
you have to bump up and look right.
I don't know what the hell the state's gonna do.
So what are you saying, Ronnie? Just so I'm kind of clear on this.
I guess what I'm saying is, so I see two overall things, like macro level
Okay.
things. One, that we tend to budget very conservatively and budget more than what we think we'll actually spend. We don't want to under budget,
Correct.
so we end up over budgeting.
Correct.
So that's one factor.
Okay.
And then we were paying for significant expenses for information technology, particularly from different reserves and things, which total $700,000 or $800,000 that we have not been showing in our budget.
Okay.
So,
Can I make a correction? I'm sorry, can I
Okay.
make a
Yeah.
correction on that?
yeah,
IT does have a budget, 1035, and roughly $250,000
yes,
was being raised through taxation.
you're right.
So
Yeah.
of that, you have another 500,000 or less that is being requested based off
Right.
what IT has submitted.
Which on the macro view then makes it more like we were 600,000 or so over budgeted last year. So so there's that IT difference, the 600,000, 500,000 difference between we budgeted 200,000, we actually maybe it's closer to 800,000. And so last year we budgeted 13.6 and we only spent 12.9, so we had 600,000 over budgeting, which kind of, you can slot in that IT expenditure as being that, so maybe like last year's budget kind of in effect covered IT, those are IT expenses that we all feel like we totally got hit with this year. But we kind of had them in last year because we were very conservative and over budgeted so many other lines. So my point is, you take last year's budget. And, well, that's what. My point was to just take last year's budget and just apply a percentage to that and say, this is what we're gonna live with. So then the question comes,
What's the percentage?
well, I mean, 3 or 4% would be what I would think we'd all like to deal with. I know our town budget, we're aiming, at 3 or 4%.
So if it's 10% or less, you're talking 14,000,000, $56, 244 roughly. Okay. If you take that,
Could be. Oh, you mean off
if
of
you
your
go above
7?
that 12,778 there,
Yeah.
Yeah,
14 million.
14 million.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So that was when he and I were
But-
talking.
but also
the
now-
14.2 or whatever.
Yeah, now
But that-
you're also
But that
included,
12,778
Mhm.
had the 829 that the state gave us.
Sure.
If we added that back into the 12,778, we're up at 13.6 as being our,
Mhm.
And if you think the state's not going to give us any money,
It's a.
then maybe
it's a
the
real
13.6 from last year is what we should be looking at. Inflating as
Yeah.
opposed to the 12,778. That's where this has gone. So if you took the 13.6 and inflated that by 4%.
Oh, by 4%.
Well, I like,
I know.
I,
I know what you're saying.
So you're talking 14 million?
then it's 14,150, and that's what I was saying to him, 14,2. But
So you're saying 14,100,000 and, or 14,200, is that where you hit? Is
Yeah.
that the number you hit?
yeah,
14,150?
yeah, thinking that, you know, if we can manage to.
It was
do-
14.3 at the last meeting.
You were 14.3 at the last?
You were 14,300, Mary?
When I spoke out at the last meeting, 14.3 was my number. Just saying.
So we're really close. So there's a motion on the table over this.
There is.
So I guess that was, my discussion was saying that I feel like we have to go lower.
Should go lower than 14.
Well, lower
14
than
million?
what Doug's, what was your motion? It was,
10%,
right, 10%.
the 12, 7,
778 or whatever it is.
that'd be 14,056,000.
Yeah. That's why I kept saying 14
Oh,
million.
okay, okay, got it, but that's,
And-
yeah, okay.
And that's using their workbooks. Their numbers. You said
Yeah.
14.3.
So if you take the less, 10% or less, then you're talking, off that 12 million figure, you're talking 14,056,724.
Just, let's keep it nice and just say 14 million.
14,000,001, did I hear you say that?
Yeah,
14 even.
all right. So there's a motion on the table to give the commissioners a target of less than 10%.
I'll amend it to 14 million even.
You'll amend it to 14 even, right? Any further discussion?
Do we have to second that?
Oh, I seconded.
Oh,
Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
What were the numbers, just for my,
14 million.
no, I'm so sorry, I meant. Well, how many in favor, how many?
Oh, 5 in favor, 1 opposed.
Thank you.
Not to be cynical, but it's all in here, we'll probably get money from the state.
I like positive thoughts.
All right, so with that, I'll entertain, one of the problems that you said was that you never know when we're gonna get together.
Yes.
So direction. I don't feel, I've heard some people say that they want us to look at RIFs and some people say that they don't think RIFs are the way to go about this.
Well, if you can't do it, if you can do it without riffs, do it without riffs. I don't know how,
We've shown that we can't do it without
I think you have.
RIFs and that we can't do it without eating into reserves and we can't.
And yeah, and I think that the budget that you've got here at 13 million is not, I mean, that 13% is not an accurate budget because it doesn't show the total amount that you plan to spend in some of the categories. For example, the jail, the sheriff,
Mhm.
IT took 90,000 out,
Mhm.
those sorts of things. So
No,
They
it's
want it off the bottom line. It's in the
Yeah.
comments.
that's,
They want it off the bottom line. They wanna show. Yes, it's in there in the verbiage in the comments of what's being used where, but it is not coming. I mean, the bottom line is there. Yes, we've made those reductions throughout the budget, but you wanna physically see. This is the budget of 25,000, CCA 100, or CCA 100,000. You wanna see it physically right there. You don't wanna read it in the comments.
yeah, I want to see it on. You
Yeah.
call it a revenue sheet, I want to call it a payment sheet. This is how we're gonna pay for it, okay? Put that on that sheet so we know we're robbing reserves, we're doing this, we're doing
I
that.
don't see it as robbing reserves. I mean,
I think that's a good term.
Yeah.
is.
It's just, it's confusing because I've been over there complaining about how the county has been eating into reserves to pay for stuff and we're being sent back to do more of that?
But that's really because you haven't all, I feel like, given us an accurate budget, because I don't think it's like you're having to have this reserve account because you haven't put a budget line in for certain things, just like the IT. And there are other just reserve accounts that I don't understand, that I would think it would be much better if you budgeted those items, and then we would have an accurate number, and then you wouldn't have to worry about over budgeting so that you can have this extra money to put into reserve accounts. And we wouldn't think that you've just got these, 40-something reserve accounts floating around. But things need to be budgeted for, because if I don't know that you're using reserve accounts to pay for severance, well, I don't know that.
Disagree with that at all. It doesn't
Right,
need to be
so-
budgeted for.
So I would love it if you guys also eventually came back and had budget lines for those, so that we don't have this over budgeting. In my town, I call it padding the budget, so that, certain departments can grow their reserves. But if we're budgeting for it, we don't need to do that for some of these reserve accounts.
Are we making any sense?
Probably 2 or 3 more spreadsheets would really make everyone.
I don't want any more damn food.
So. I'm bringing one more comments. I have sat here through a number of meetings and I get very mixed comments. We're being told, we don't want you to use reserves, so give us a true budget. Then I get, let's not use reserve, or let's use reserves, and we really want a budget. We are being penalized at this point for decisions that were made in the past, and we're doing the best that we can.
I want you to show me a budget that I expect to spend this much money on the jail next year. And have it all in. Then I want you to take and tell me how you're gonna pay for that. Are you gonna charge taxes? Are you gonna take some of it out of reserve? What are you gonna do? How are you gonna get there? And maybe part of what you're gonna do is you're gonna have some reductions in force. That's all. I wanna know what the budget is, because if you don't put the actual amount of what it costs you for the jail in there this year, next year, when the committee gets together and they go, oh, geez, this year.
I feel like part of that isn't really the commissioner's fault. I mean, they had a contract with 2 bridges and Knox, and then that kind of blew apart, and so they had to go find boarding for the inmates elsewhere. And then with the unions, I mean, that's kind of all over the place. We have literally no control over that.
You have
And
control.
so,
If you don't have the money to pay them, you have the control.
But the other lever of that is that you're then gonna pay us, we're gonna look for money for legal.
and
We already need money for legal because of the delay in this.
yeah, the
We
union,
cannot burden the taxpayers. It's that simple.
but
Where you get the money from is an issue, but the bottom line is how many dollars you're spending. That's the issue, not necessarily where you get it from, but how much money you're spending.
There's 2 issues there, Doug. How much money am I spending should be in my budget? 2, where I can, if I can reduce that spending somehow through revenue, state this, whatever, using a reserve, that's my assessment. So it's a budget and assessment discussion.
Right.
And I wanna see the budget stand on its own with all of the things you wanna pay for in 2026. And I wanna see the other piece, you've called it revenue so far, stand on its own. So that when I look at the 2, I can say, all right, the total assessment's gonna be X number of dollars.
but we don't want to put ourselves in the same kind of situation that Washington or Penobscot is either. That is a very scary reality that we could find ourselves in if we don't walk this very carefully.
I don't know that we're at the same place as they are,
We're on the same road.
might be.
I look at it like an old house. If you don't do the maintenance, it's gonna fall apart. But at the same time, you're limited by how much money you can spend.
That's right.
So we need to look at the whole picture. We need to look at the spending and we need to look at where the money's coming from. Is it coming from property taxes? Is it coming from reserves? Is it coming from undesignated? That's what we need to see. Let me read. That's what we need to see from you guys.
Okay. So when do we want to get together next?
Any night but Monday.
You say Monday.
Next Monday?
Yeah,
Any night but Monday.
right. To do what you wanna do, I need at least 3 solid days.
Just, you, I don't know, if you've gotten your basic work done.
No,
That's-
yeah, I wanna give Carrie a medal for that. I mean,
I know.
it's really important work, but I am looking forward to when we pass the budget and the people who work for the county can spend time doing the job that they would normally be doing.
We're letting things go that are gonna cause problems.
Yeah.
Especially, this is not on her.
No.
At all.
And I don't think that.
At all.
I don't think,
But things are not getting done.
I don't think anyone's saying that. I think that
On my level too.
we're recognizing that, much of this happened in the past. And so nobody up there should take it personal. Right, it happened in the past, but we're all here now in trying, to fix it. And, I, for one, wouldn't be really comfortable in saying, well, there's, it's too much and it's too hard right now, so we're just gonna go ahead and vote for 17% and go on. But I wanna say, I'm
Yeah.
recognizing that you're all new, that Carrie was new, that everyone is new.
Yeah, I'm not taking personal offense to it. I just I'm recognizing that every time we go through rounds of this and every time we ask for more numbers, and I've been over there asking for them, just how much we are asking of the people who work for the county to be doing all of this number crunching around this budget process, which is usually done in December into February, into March, and there's lots of good reasons why we're in this position and that we are asking for that. But if we continue doing this for months, we're not gonna have functioning finance department. We're not gonna have a functioning county anymore because all we're gonna be doing is this.
I did happen to watch the commissioners, meeting this week.
Mhm.
And so what I would probably hope is that you all would take this back much seriously, because I did see how at first she started out with a 13 and just like that, well, you got right back up there to the 17.
Because of the requests to not eat into reserves.
Well, I know, but I saw, sort of a more casual conversation about things like with the roof or the cabinet repairs in the sheriff's department, and yourselves not really having all the figures there. I just saw more of a casual conversation about increasing that budget back up.
Mhm.
It's just how I took it.
Okay. Are you proposing a date?
I was thinking about a date, just because the way we normally do this when we get started in budgets in September, right? We sit in our meeting and we say, when can we meet, right, which tend to be Friday nights or Saturdays, because that's doesn't interfere with all of our different select board and other boards and stuff like that. So,
And my dating days are over.
oh, I thought you were gonna do Friday night. I mean,
Are you sure, Bob?
I'm pretty sure.
so
You are my date, Kevin.
I don't know whether you wanna
Here I am.
like Friday the 27th, or is that too? I mean, I hate to put pressure on that.
Carrie, can you do Friday the 27th? Is that
It's like a week
Tuesday?
and a half.
Oh, that's this.
No, that's
No.
this Friday, no.
That's this- oh,
Yeah.
No, I'm in the wrong week. Sorry,
Okay.
Friday the 6th of March. Sorry, I was
can do.
thinking this Friday was
I
the
can do
20th.
6th.
I can do the 6th.
And
I can do it.
we got a quorum.
All right, the 6th.
6 p.m.
You wanna do 6? I could do earlier. It seems like you need the time, that's why I'm saying I could do earlier. But if everyone wants to do 6, that's great.
I'm not sure about Randy or Jenny.
I can do anytime on Saturday.
I can do it anytime.
Hey, Bob, just a quick question, if you guys did come and on March sixth, say this next meeting, and they've got the budget down, whatever, it's still gonna go to a public
We
meeting
will
after
bring it,
that?
we
Still gonna-
decided we will hold
what
a
you
public
said?
meeting.
Great, thank you.
If you do it at 6, that might be late, just a heads up. I gotta go all the way up to pick up my daughter up in, Charleston.
Okay, so Julie, somebody proposed a time.
So just to give you a heads up.
Yes.
We do know that Tammy is in her busiest peak season, and she has told us that she's working Monday through Saturday.
Okay. All
I
right,
don't wanna meet on Sunday.
That's great, neither do I.
no,
And probably Tammy doesn't either.
Yeah.
no,
All right, so. We've got the March 6th. What time would you like to meet?
Is 6:30 better for you, Tim?
Yeah,
6:30?
or you bring.
Yeah.
Huh?
PM.
PM, yeah.
Yeah, I know. Oh. Wouldn't bother me,
It's already injured me, I have a staple.
6:30?
6:30.
Okay.
All right. So I think we've agreed March 6th at 6:30.
Great.
Is our next meeting. And with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
second.
All in favor?